You clicked on Sherlock's Dawn to uncover the real origins of the world's greatest detective, and how a brutal, baffling murder in a forgotten London house laid the groundwork for his legend. And in this video we're diving deep into the crimson secrets of a study in Scarlet. Before the Deerstalker, before Baker Street, before Moriarty, there was a study in Scarlet. This isn't just a book, it's the raw, unfiltered genesis of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. We're talking 1887 Gaslight-era London, where a young, ambitious author named Arthur Conan Doyle dared to invent a new kind of hero and a new kind of crime story. Discover the literary genius and the brilliant, often overlooked techniques Doyle pioneered in this foundational work. So, if you're ready for the making of a legend, you're in the right place. Stick around, this is going to be elementary, but far from simple. If you enjoy this video, give us a like and hit subscribe for more literary classics. A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle. Part 1. Chapter 1, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. In the year 1878, I earned my degree of Doctor of Medicine from the University of London and proceeded to Netley to complete the course prescribed for army surgeons. After finishing my studies there, I was attached as assistant surgeon to the 5th Northumberland Fusiliers. The regiment was stationed in India at the time, but before I could join it, the Second Afghan War had broken out. When I landed in Bombay, I learned that my corps had already advanced through the mountain passes and was deep in enemy territory. I followed with many other officers in similar positions, and eventually reached Kandahar safely, where I found my regiment and immediately took up my duties. The campaign brought honors and promotions to many, but for me it meant misfortune. I was removed from my brigade and assigned to the Berkshires, with whom I fought at the fatal Battle of Maiwand. There I was struck on the shoulder by a Jezile bullet, which shattered the bone and grazed the subclavian artery. I should have fallen into the hands of the murderous Ghazis had it not been for the bravery of Murray, my orderly, who threw me across a pack horse and brought me safely to the British lines. Worn by pain and weakened by hardships, I was moved with many wounded to the base hospital at Peshawar. There I recovered enough to walk about the wards and to bask a little on the veranda, when suddenly I was struck down by enteric fever, the dreaded curse of our Indian possessions. For months my life was despairing. When I finally began to heal, I was so weak and emaciated that a medical board decided I must return to England without delay. I was sent, therefore, by the troopship Orontes, and landed a month later on Portsmouth Jetty, my health irreparably ruined but with permission from the government to spend 9 months trying to restore it. Having neither kith nor kin in England, I was as free as air, or as free as an income of 11 shillings and sixpence a day allows. Naturally, I gravitated to London, that great cesspool into which all the loungers and idlers of the empire flock. There I stayed for some time at a private hotel in the Strand, leading a comfortless, meaningless existence, and spending my money far more freely than I ought. My finances soon became alarming, so I realized I must either leave the metropolis and go to the country, or make a complete change in my way of living. Choosing the latter, I decided to leave the hotel and find a less expensive, less pretentious place. On the very day I made this decision, I stood at the Criterion bar when someone tapped me on the shoulder. Turning, I recognized young Stamford, who had been a dresser under me at Bart's Hospital. The sight of a friendly face in the vast wilderness of London was a great comfort to a lonely man. Stamford had never been a close friend before, but now I welcomed him enthusiastically, and he seemed delighted to see me as well. In my eagerness, I invited him to lunch at the Holborn, and we set off together in a hansom cab. "Whatever have you been doing with yourself, Watson?" he asked, bemused, as we rattled through the crowded London streets. "You're as thin as a lath and as brown as a nut." I gave a brief account of my adventures, and by the time I finished, we arrived at our destination. "Poor devil," he said sympathetically. "What are you up to now?" "Looking for lodgings," I replied. "Trying to find comfortable rooms at a reasonable price." "That's funny," said Stamford. "You're the second man today to use that expression." "And who was the first?" "A fellow working at the chemical laboratory at the hospital. He was bemoaning the fact that he couldn't find someone to share some nice rooms he'd found that were too costly for him alone." "By Jove!" I exclaimed, "if he wants a partner to share the rooms and expenses, I'm the man. I'd rather have company than be alone." Young Stamford looked at me strangely over his wineglass. "You don't know Sherlock Holmes yet," he said. "Perhaps you wouldn't care for him as a constant companion." "Why, what's wrong with him?" "Oh, I didn't say there was anything wrong with him. He's a bit queer in his ideas, an enthusiast in some branches of science. As far as I know, he's a decent enough fellow." "A medical student, I suppose?" "No, I have no idea what he intends to do. He's well versed in anatomy, an excellent chemist, but he's never taken any formal medical classes. His studies are desultory and eccentric, but he's amassed a great deal of unusual knowledge that would astonish his professors. Did you ever ask him what he plans to do? No, he's not easy to draw out, though he can be very talkative when the fancy takes him. I would like to meet him, I said. If I'm to lodge with someone, I'd prefer a quiet, studious man. I can't bear much noise or excitement yet. I've had enough of that in Afghanistan. How can I meet this friend of yours? He'll be at the lab, Stanford said. He either avoids it for weeks or else works there from morning to night. If you like, we can go together after lunch. Certainly, I answered, and the conversation drifted to other topics. As we made our way to the hospital, Stanford told me more about the man I proposed to live with. Don't blame me if you don't get on with him, he warned. I know little about him except what I've learned at the lab. You proposed the arrangement, so don't hold me responsible. If we don't get on, we can part easily, I said. But, Stanford, I added, looking hard at him, you have some reason for washing your hands of this. Is his temper so difficult? Don't be afraid to tell me. It's hard to explain, he laughed. Holmes is a bit too scientific for my taste, almost cold-blooded. I can imagine him giving a friend a small pinch of the latest vegetable alkaloid, not to harm but out of pure curiosity just to see what happens. And I think he'd take it himself just as readily. He has a passion for exact knowledge. Very proper. Yes, but pushed too far. Like when he beats his specimens in the dissecting rooms with a stick to see how bruises form after death. I saw him do it with my own eyes. Beating the specimens? Yes, to verify how bruises behave post-mortem. And yet you say he's not a medical student? No. Heaven knows what his studies are for. But here we are. We turned down a narrow lane and entered a side door to a hospital wing. Familiar ground, I needed no guide. We climbed bleak stone stairs, passed down a long corridor lined with whitewashed walls and dull doors. Near the far end, a low arched passage led to the chemical laboratory. The room was large and lofty, lined and littered with countless bottles. Broad, low tables bristled with retorts, test tubes, and little Bunsen lamps flickering with blue flames. Only one student was present, bent over a distant table, absorbed in his work. At the sound of our steps, he glanced up and sprang to his feet with a cry. "I've found it! I've found it!" he shouted to Stanford, running toward us with a test tube in hand. A reagent precipitated by hemoglobin and nothing else. Greater delight could not have shone upon his face had he discovered gold. "Dr. Watson, Mr. Sherlock Holmes," Stanford introduced us. "How are you?" said Holmes cordially, shaking my hand with unexpected strength. "You've been in Afghanistan, I perceive. How on earth did you know?" I asked in astonishment. "Never mind," he chuckled. "The question is the hemoglobin. You see its significance." "It's chemically interesting, certainly," I said, "but practically? Man, it's the most practical medico-legal discovery for years. It gives us an infallible test for blood stains. Come here." He seized my coat sleeve eagerly and pulled me toward his table. "Let's have some fresh blood." He pricked his finger with a bodkin, drawing off a drop into a chemical pipette. "Now, I add this small amount to a liter of water. The mixture looks like pure water, the blood is less than 1 part in a million. But watch for the characteristic reaction." He threw in a few white crystals, then some drops of a clear liquid. Instantly the mixture turned a dull mahogany, and brownish dust fell to the bottom. "Ha! Ha!" he cried, clapping his hands like a child with a new toy. "What do you think?" "It's a very delicate test," I noted. "Beautiful." The old guaiacum test was clumsy and uncertain. So is the microscopic method, which is useless after a few hours. This one works on both old and new stains. If only it had been invented sooner, many criminals might have hung long ago. Indeed. Criminal cases often hinge on whether a stain is blood or rust, mud or fruit stains. Many experts have puzzled over this, because there was no reliable test. Now we have the Sherlock Holmes test. No more difficulty. His eyes glittered, hand over his heart, bowing as if to an imagined applause. "You should be congratulated," I said, surprised at his enthusiasm. "There was the von Bischoff case in Frankfurt last year. He would have been hung with this test. Then Mason of Bradford, Muller, Lefebvre of Montpellier, and Sampson of New Orleans. I could name dozens where it would have been decisive." "You seem like a walking calendar of crime," laughed Stanford. "You might start a paper, Police News of the Past." "Interesting reading too," said Holmes, putting a plaster over his finger prick. "I have to be careful," he smiled at me. I dabble with poisons quite a bit. His hand was mottled with similar plasters, stained by strong acids. We're here on business, Stamford said, seating himself on a three-legged stool and pushing one toward me. My friend wants to find lodgings, and since you complained of no one sharing rooms, I thought I'd bring you together. Holmes seemed delighted. I want a suite on Baker Street, he said, perfect for us. You don't mind strong tobacco smoke, I hope? I always smoke ships myself. That's fine. I often have chemicals and experiments going. Would that bother you? Not at all. Let me see. What else? I get into moods where I don't speak for days. Don't think I'm sulky. Just leave me alone and I'll be fine. You. I laughed at his cross-examination. I keep a bull pup, dislike noise because of my nerves, get up at ungodly hours, and I'm very lazy. When I'm well, I have other vices, but those are the main ones for now. Violin playing, does that count as noise? It depends on the player. Well played, a violin's a treat. Badly played? Oh, that's okay, he laughed. I think we're settled. If you like the rooms. When shall we see them? Call here at noon tomorrow and we'll go together. Noon exactly. I shook his hand. We left him among his chemicals and walked back toward my hotel. By the way, I asked as we parted, how did you know I'd come from Afghanistan? Holmes smiled enigmatically. That's his little peculiarity, said Stamford. Many want to know how he finds things out. Oh, a mystery is it? I said eagerly. Very piquant. Thanks for bringing us together. The proper study of mankind is man, you know. You must study him then, said Stamford, bidding me goodbye. He's a knotty problem. He'll learn more about you than you know about him. Goodbye. Goodbye, I replied, quite interested in my new acquaintance. Chapter 2, The Science of Deduction. We met the next day as planned and inspected the rooms at 221B Baker Street. They comprised 2 comfortable bedrooms and a large, airy sitting room, cheerfully furnished and lit by 2 broad windows. The apartments were desirable and moderately priced when shared, so we immediately agreed and took possession. That very evening I moved my things from the hotel, and the next morning Holmes followed with several boxes and portmanteaus. 4 days we busily unpacked and arranged our belongings, then began settling into our new home. Holmes was not at all difficult to live with. Quiet in habit and regular in routine, he was rarely up past 10 at night. He usually had breakfast and left before I was awake. Some days he worked in the chemical laboratory, other times in the dissecting rooms, or he took long walks through the lowest parts of the city. When the working fit came upon him, his energy was boundless. But sometimes a reaction seized him, and for days he lay on the sofa, scarcely moving or speaking. His eyes held a dreamy, vacant look that once made me suspect narcotics, if not for the evident temperance and cleanliness of his life. Weeks passed and my interest in him deepened. His very presence commanded attention. He was over 6 feet tall but so lean that he appeared even taller. His eyes were sharp and piercing, except in his moments of torpor. His thin, hawk-like nose gave him an alert, decisive air, and his prominent square chin marked a man of determination. His hands were always ink-stained and marked with chemicals, yet possessed extraordinary delicacy, a fact I often noticed while watching him handle fragile instruments. The reader may call me a busybody, but I confess how much this man stirred my curiosity and how often I tried to break through his reticence on personal matters. Remember, my own life was aimless, with little to engage me. Fragile health kept me indoors unless the weather was kind, and I had no friends to break the monotony. So I welcomed the mystery surrounding Holmes, spending much time trying to unravel it. He was not studying medicine. He confirmed Stamford's opinion of that. He had not pursued any course to gain a degree in science or any recognized field. Yet his zeal for certain studies was remarkable. Within eccentric limits, his knowledge was extraordinarily exact and extensive, often astonishing me. Surely a man works so hard and attains such exact knowledge only with a definite purpose. Desultory readers rarely display such precision. No one burdens his mind with trivia unless he has good reason. His ignorance was as remarkable as his knowledge. He knew nothing of contemporary literature, philosophy, or politics. When I quoted Thomas Carlyle, he asked naively who that was and what he had done. I was stunned when he confessed ignorance of the Copernican theory and the solar system. I could hardly believe a civilized man of the 19th century would be unaware that Earth traveled around the sun. You appear astonished, he said, smiling. Now that I know it, I shall do my best to forget it. To forget it? Yes, he explained. I think a man's brain is like a little, empty attic that you fill with furniture as you choose. A fool takes in all the lumber he comes across, so useful knowledge gets crowded out or jumbled, making it hard to find. A skillful workman takes great care of what he puts in, only tools he needs for his work, all in perfect order. It's a mistake to think that an attic has elastic walls. It has a limit. For every new piece of knowledge you forget something old. It's vital not to let useless facts elbow out the useful. But the solar system? I protested. What's it to me? He interrupted impatiently. You say we go round the sun. If we went round the moon, it wouldn't make a pennyworth of difference to me or my work. I nearly asked him what his work was, but something in his manner warned me that the question would be unwelcome. I pondered our conversation, trying to figure it out. He would only acquire knowledge useful to his goal. I listed mentally the exceptional facts he knew, even jotted them down. Sherlock Holmes, his limits. Literature, nil. Philosophy, nil. Astronomy, nil. Politics, feeble. Botany, variable. Knows belladonna, opium, poisons generally, no practical gardening. Geology, practical but limited, recognizes soils by glance. After walks, notes splashes on trousers and identifies their origin by color and texture. Chemistry, profound. Anatomy, accurate but unsystematic. Sensational literature, immense, knows every horror of the century. Plays violin well. Expert single-stick player, boxer, swordsman. Good practical knowledge of British law. I threw the list into the fire, despairing. If I can only find where he fits all these together and find a profession needing them all, I muttered, I may as well give up. I earlier mentioned his violin playing, which was as eccentric as his other talents. He could play difficult pieces, including Mendelssohn's Lieder, at my request. When left alone, however, he rarely played recognized tunes, instead drawing careless, sometimes melancholy, sometimes cheerful chords, reflecting his thoughts, though whether music aided those thoughts or was mere whim was unclear. I might have rebelled against these odd solos had he not often ended by playing a series of my favorite airs to compensate. In the first week or so we had no visitors. I began to think Holmes was as friendless as myself. Yet he had many acquaintances from all walks of life. There was a sallow, rat-faced, dark-eyed man introduced as Mr. Lestrade who visited 3 or 4 times a week. One morning a young, fashionably dressed girl came and stayed half an hour. The same afternoon a shabby old man resembling a Jewish peddler arrived, excited, closely followed by a shabbily dressed elderly woman. Another day an old white-haired gentleman met with Holmes, and once a railway porter in a velveteen uniform came by. When any of these peculiar visitors appeared, Holmes requested the sitting room for business, and I retired to the bedroom. He always apologized for the inconvenience. I have to use this room as my office, he said, and these people are my clients. This gave me chances to ask him direct questions, which he politely avoided, but eventually opened up of his own accord. On March 4th, a day I remember well, I woke earlier than usual to find Holmes still eating breakfast. The landlady had grown used to my late habits and hadn't prepared my place or coffee. In annoyance, I rang the bell and curtly announced I was ready. Picking up a magazine from the table, I tried to pass the time while Holmes silently munched toast. The magazine bore a pencil mark at one article's heading, and I began to read. The piece, titled The Book of Life, described how much an observant man could learn by methodical examination of the world. It struck me as a curious mix of shrewdness and absurdity. The logic was close and intense, but the deduction seemed far-fetched and exaggerated. The writer claimed to read a man's innermost thoughts by a glance, a muscle twitch, or a momentary expression. According to him, deceit was impossible for one trained in observation and analysis. His conclusions were said to be as certain as Euclid's theorems. To the uninitiated, such results would seem like necromancy. From a drop of water, the writer said, a logician could infer the possibility of an Atlantic or a Niagara without ever having seen or heard of either. All life is a great chain, the nature of which is known whenever we see a single link. Like other arts, deduction and analysis require long, patient study. Life is too short to master them fully. Start by learning to recognize a man's history and trade at a glance. Though the exercise seems childish, it sharpens observation and teaches where and what to look for. A man's fingernails, coat sleeve, boots, trouser knees, finger calluses, expression and shirt cuffs, all reveal his calling. It's almost impossible for a skilled observer to be misled. I slammed the magazine down. What an ineffable twaddle! I cried. Never read such rubbish. Holmes asked, what is it? This article, I said, pointing with my egg spoon. Clearly written but irritating. It's the theory of some armchair lounger creating neat paradoxes in his study. Not practical at all. I'd like to see him trapped in a third-class carriage on the underground, asked to name the trades of all his fellow passengers. He'd lose 1,000 to 1. You'd lose? Holmes said calmly. I wrote that article. You? Yes. I'm skilled in observation and deduction. The theories you find so chimerical are extremely practical. I depend on them for my living. How? I have a trade. I suppose I'm unique, a consulting detective. London has many government and private detectives. When they fail, they come to me to get on track. They bring me the evidence, and by knowledge of criminal history, I sort it out. Crime follows patterns. If you know 1,000 cases, you're likely to solve the 1,001st. Lestrade is a well-known detective who recently got confused over a forgery case. That's why he came here. And these other visitors? Mostly sent by private inquiry agencies. People troubled by something who want a little enlightenment. They tell their story, I share my thoughts, then I take my fee. Do you mean to say without leaving your room, you can unravel a knot that others cannot, despite seeing every detail? Exactly. I have a kind of intuition. Sometimes, more complex cases require me to see things myself. I apply special knowledge which helps immensely. The rules of deduction from that article are invaluable to me. You seemed surprised when I told you on our first meeting that you'd come from Afghanistan. You were told? No. I knew. From a long habit, the thoughts flew swiftly. I thought, here's a gentleman with a medical but military air, clearly an army doctor. He's just come from the tropics, his face is dark but wrists fair. He's endured hardship, his haggard face shows it. His left arm is injured and held stiffly. Where in the tropics could an English army doctor have suffered so? Afghanistan. It took less than a second. I said it and you were amazed. Simple enough when explained. You remind me of Poe's Dupin. I hadn't thought such men existed outside stories. Holmes lit his pipe. You may think comparing me to Dupin is a compliment. I don't. Dupin was superficial and showy. He made clever remarks after long silences. He had analytical genius, but was no great phenomenon like Poe imagined. Have you read Gaboriau? Does Lecoq meet your standard? Holmes sniffed sardonically. Lecoq was a bungler, only his energy counted. The book made me ill. The case was identifying an unknown prisoner. I could have done it in 24 hours. Lecoq took 6 months. It could be a textbook on what not to do. I was indignant that 2 of my admired detectives were dismissed. I went to the window to watch the busy street. He may be clever but conceited too, I thought. There are no crimes these days, Holmes grumbled. What good are brains? I have the talent to be famous. No man has studied and applied natural talent to crime detection as I have. And what's the result? No crime or bungling villainy so transparent even Scotland Yard officials see through it. Annoyed at his arrogance, I changed the subject. Who's that fellow? I asked, nodding at a burly man walking anxiously across the street, holding a large blue envelope. Retired Sergeant of Marines, Holmes replied. Brag and bounce, I thought. He's sure I can't verify that. Before I finished, the man spotted our number and hurried over. We heard a loud knock, his deep voice below, then heavy footsteps up the stairs. For Mr. Sherlock Holmes, he said, entering with a letter. Here was my chance to humble his conceit, though he was unaware as he took the delivery. May I ask your trade, lad? I said blandly. Commissionaire, sir, he grunted. Uniform away for repairs. And you were? A sergeant, sir, Royal Marine Light Infantry, sir. No answer? Right, sir. He clicked his heels, saluted, and was gone. From a drop of water, the writer said, a logician could infer the possibility of an Atlantic or a Niagara without ever having seen or heard of either. All life is a great chain, the nature of which is known whenever we see a single link. Like other arts, deduction and analysis require long, patient study. Life is too short to master them fully. Start by learning to recognize a man's history and trade at a glance. Though the exercise seems childish, it sharpens observation and teaches where and what to look for. A man's fingernails, coat sleeve, boots, trouser knees, finger calluses, expression and shirt cuffs, all reveal his calling. It's almost impossible for a skilled observer to be misled. I slammed the magazine down. What an ineffable twaddle. I cried. Never read such rubbish. Holmes asked, what is it? This article, I said, pointing with my egg spoon. Clearly written but irritating. It's the theory of some armchair lounger creating neat paradoxes in his study. Not practical at all. I'd like to see him trapped in a third-class carriage on the underground, asked to name the trades of all his fellow passengers. He'd lose 1,000 to 1. You'd lose? Holmes said calmly. I wrote that article. You? Yes. I'm skilled in observation and deduction. The theories you find so chimerical are extremely practical. I depend on them for my living. How? I have a trade. I suppose I'm unique, a consulting detective. London has many government and private detectives. When they fail, they come to me to get on track. They bring me the evidence, and by knowledge of criminal history, I sort it out. Crime follows patterns. If you know 1,000 cases, you're likely to solve the 1,001st. Lestrade is a well-known detective who recently got confused over a forgery case. That's why he came here. And these other visitors? Mostly sent by private inquiry agencies. People troubled by something who want a little enlightenment. They tell their story, I share my thoughts, then I take my fee. Do you mean to say without leaving your room, you can unravel a knot that others cannot, despite seeing every detail? Exactly. I have a kind of intuition. Sometimes, more complex cases require me to see things myself. I apply special knowledge which helps immensely. The rules of deduction from that article are invaluable to me. You seemed surprised when I told you on our first meeting that you'd come from Afghanistan. You were told? No. I knew. From a long habit, the thoughts flew swiftly. I thought, here's a gentleman with a medical but military air, clearly an army doctor. He's just come from the tropics, his face is dark but wrists fair. He's endured hardship, his haggard face shows it. His left arm is injured and held stiffly. Where in the tropics could an English army doctor have suffered so? Afghanistan. It took less than a second. I said it and you were amazed. Simple enough when explained. You remind me of Poe's Dupin. I hadn't thought such men existed outside stories. Holmes lit his pipe. You may think comparing me to Dupin is a compliment. I don't. Dupin was superficial and showy. He made clever remarks after long silences. He had analytical genius, but was no great phenomenon like Poe imagined. Have you read Gaboriau? Does Lecoq meet your standard? Holmes sniffed sardonically. Lecoq was a bungler, only his energy counted. The book made me ill. The case was identifying an unknown prisoner. I could have done it in 24 hours. Lecoq took 6 months. It could be a textbook on what not to do. I was indignant that 2 of my admired detectives were dismissed. I went to the window to watch the busy street. He may be clever but conceited too, I thought. There are no crimes these days, Holmes grumbled. What good are brains? I have the talent to be famous. No man has studied and applied natural talent to crime detection as I have. And what's the result? No crime or bungling villainy so transparent even Scotland Yard officials see through it. Annoyed at his arrogance, I changed the subject. Who's that fellow? I asked, nodding at a burly man walking anxiously across the street, holding a large blue envelope. Retired Sergeant of Marines, Holmes replied. Brag and bounce, I thought. He's sure I can't verify that. Before I finished, the man spotted our number and hurried over. We heard a loud knock, his deep voice below, then heavy footsteps up the stairs. For Mr. Sherlock Holmes, he said, entering with a letter. Here was my chance to humble his conceit, though he was unaware as he took the delivery. May I ask your trade, lad? I said blandly. Commissionaire, sir, he grunted. Uniform away for repairs. And you were? A sergeant, sir, Royal Marine Light Infantry, sir. No answer? Right, sir. He clicked his heels, saluted, and was gone. Chapter 3: The Lauriston Gardens Mystery. I must admit I was considerably startled by this fresh proof of my companion's practical theories. My respect for Sherlock Holmes's powers of analysis grew immensely. Still, a faint suspicion lingered that the whole episode had been arranged to dazzle me, though why he would want to deceive me remained beyond my comprehension. When I looked at him, he had finished reading the note, and his eyes wore that vacant, lackluster expression that signaled deep thought. How in the world did you deduce that? I asked. Deduce what? He replied petulantly. That he was a retired sergeant of Marines. I have no time for trifles, he answered brusquely, then with a smile, excuse my rudeness. You interrupted my train of thought, but perhaps it's just as well. So you really couldn't tell that man was a sergeant of Marines? No, indeed. It was easier to know than to explain. If you were asked to prove 2 + 2 makes 4, you might struggle, yet you'd be sure of the fact. Even from across the street I could see a great blue anchor tattooed on the back of the fellow's hand. That didn't lie. He had military carriage and regulation side whiskers. There you have the Marine. He carried himself with self-importance and a certain air of command. You must have noticed how he held his head and swung his cane. He looked like a steady, respectable, middle-aged man, which led me to believe he'd been a sergeant. Wonderful, I exclaimed. Commonplace, Holmes said, though I could tell from his expression that he was pleased at my admiration. I said earlier there were no criminals. Looks like I was wrong. Look at this. He tossed me the note the commissionaire had brought. I scanned it and cried, "This is terrible." "It does seem out of the ordinary," Holmes remarked calmly. "Would you mind reading it aloud?" I did so. "My dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, there has been bad business last night at number 3 Lauriston Gardens, off Brixton Road. Our man on the beat saw a light about 2 in the morning, a suspicious thing in an empty house. He found the door open and in the front room, bare of furniture, discovered the body of a well-dressed gentleman. Cards in his pocket bore the name Enoch J. Drebber, Cleveland, Ohio, USA. No robbery and no clue how the man died. Blood marks are in the room but none on the body. The whole affair is baffling. If you can come before noon, you'll find me there. I've left the scene untouched until I hear from you. If unable to come, I will send more details and would welcome your opinion. Yours faithfully, Tobias Gregson." "Gregson's the smartest of Scotland Yard," Holmes remarked. "He and Lestrade are the pick of a bad lot, both quick and energetic but shockingly conventional. They're jealous of each other like professional beauties. If both take this case, there'll be some fun." I was amazed at his calmness. "There's no time to lose. Shall I order you a cab?" "I'm not sure I'll go. I'm the laziest devil alive, when the fit takes me, but I can be spry at times. But this is just the kind of case you've been longing for." "My dear fellow, what does it matter to me? Even if I solve it, Gregson, Lestrade, and their ilk will pocket the credit. That's the way with unofficial detectives. But he begs your help. Yes, he knows I'm his superior and admits it, just not to others. Still, let's go and take a look. I'll work it out on my own. I may have a laugh at them too. Come on." He bustled on his overcoat, clearly in an energetic mood. "Get your hat," he ordered. "Shall I come?" "Yes, if you have nothing better to do." A minute later we were in a hansom speeding toward Brixton Road. It was a foggy morning, the rooftops covered in a dull haze, reflecting the mud-colored streets below. Holmes was in high spirits, prattling about Cremona fiddles and the difference between a Stradivarius and an Amati. I was silent, melancholy at the dull weather and the grim business. "You don't seem to think much about the case," I said, interrupting Holmes's musical disquisition. "No data yet," he replied. "It's a capital mistake to theorize before all evidence is in. It biases judgment." "You'll have it soon," I remarked, pointing ahead. "There's the Brixton Road, and if I'm not mistaken, that's the house." "Indeed. Stop, driver." We still had 100 yards, but Holmes insisted we walk the last stretch. Number 3 Lauriston Gardens looked ill-omened and forbidding. It was one of 4 houses set back from the street, 2 occupied, 2 empty. The empty ones had dreary, vacant windows, some plastered with "to let" cards like cataracts. A small, neglected garden with sparse sickly plants separated the houses from the street, crossed by a narrow yellowish clay and gravel path, muddied from the night's rain. A 3-foot brick wall topped by wooden rails bounded the garden. Leaning against it was a sturdy police constable, surrounded by curious loafers craning to glimpse the proceedings inside. I had expected Holmes to hurry inside and start working, but nothing could have been farther from his mind. With an air bordering on affectation, he lounged up and down the pavement, gazing vacantly at the ground, sky, opposite houses and railings. After some scrutiny, he slowly walked down the path's grassy edge, eyes fixed on the ground. Twice he stopped, once smiled, and uttered a satisfied exclamation. Though many footsteps marked the wet clay, the police had been tramping there, so I could not see how Holmes hoped to learn anything. Yet his extraordinary perceptiveness left me confident. At the door, a tall, pale, flaxen-haired man with a notebook in hand rushed forward, grasping Holmes's hand warmly. "It is kind of you to come," he said. "I have had everything left untouched." "Except that," Holmes replied, gesturing at the mud on the path. "If a herd of buffaloes had passed, it couldn't be worse. I suppose you drew your own conclusions before allowing this, Gregson?" "I've had enough to do inside," the detective said evasively. "Mr. Lestrade is here. I relied on him." Holmes grinned at me sardonically. "With you and Lestrade on the case, there's little for a third party to discover." Gregson rubbed his hands, self-satisfied. "I think we've done all we can. It's a queer case and I knew you'd like it. You didn't come here by cab? Holmes asked. No. Nor Lestrade. No. Then let's look at the room. With that, he strode into the house, followed by Gregson, whose face showed surprise. A short, dusty passage led to the kitchen and offices. 2 doors opened left and right. One had been closed for weeks. The other led to the dining room, the room where the mystery had occurred. Holmes entered, and I followed with a subdued feeling that death inspires. The room appeared larger without any furniture. Gaudy wallpaper, blotched with mildew, hung loose in places, exposing yellow plaster beneath. Opposite the door stood a showy fireplace with an imitation white marble mantelpiece, upon which rested the stump of a red wax candle. The single window was dirty, casting a hazy, dull gray light over everything, which was thickly coated with dust. Though I would note these details later, my attention was fixed upon the grim, motionless figure stretched on the floor. His vacant, sightless eyes stared at the stained ceiling. He was a man of about 43 or 44, medium height, broad-shouldered, with crisp curly black hair and a short, stubbly beard. He wore a heavy broadcloth frock coat and waistcoat, light trousers and immaculate collar and cuffs. A well-brushed top hat lay beside him. His hands were clenched, arms outstretched, legs crossed as though struggling fiercely in his death. His rigid face wore a look of horror, and as I judged, hatred, unlike any I had seen. The terrible contortion combined with his low forehead, blunt nose, and jutting jaw gave him a singularly simious, ape-like appearance, worsened by his unnatural posture. I have seen many forms of death, but never in such a fearsome aspect as in that grimy room looking out on a main suburban London street. Lestrade, lean and ferret-like as ever, stood by the doorway and greeted Holmes and me. "This case will cause a stir, sir," he said. "It beats anything I've seen, and I've seen a lot." "Any clues?" asked Gregson. "None at all," said Lestrade. Holmes knelt by the body, examining it intently. "You're sure there's no wound?" he asked, pointing at pools and splashes of blood scattered about. "Positive," answered both detectives. "Then this blood must belong to a second person, presumably the murderer if murder occurred. It reminds me of the death of Van Jansen in Utrecht in the year 1834. Do you remember, Gregson?" "No, sir." "Read it up, you should. There's nothing new under the sun. It's all been done before." His nimble fingers flew, feeling, pressing, unbuttoning, examining, with that faraway gaze I had noted before. The examination was swift yet meticulous. At last, he sniffed the man's lips and glanced at the soles of his patent leather boots. "He hasn't been moved?" "No, only as necessary for examination. You can take him to the mortuary. Nothing more to learn." Gregson summoned a stretcher and 4 men. As they lifted the body, a gold ring tinkled to the floor. Lestrade picked it up, eyes mystified. "There's been a woman here," he exclaimed. "A woman's wedding ring." We gathered to look. The plain gold circlet had clearly belonged to a bride. "The plot thickens," said Gregson. "Heaven knows it was puzzling enough before. Or does it simplify matters?" Holmes observed. "Staring at it won't help. What was found in his pockets?" Gregson pointed to a clutter of items on the bottom stairs. Gold watch number 97163 by Barad of London, heavy gold Albert chain, gold ring with Masonic device, gold pin of a bulldog's head with ruby eyes, Russian leather card case with cards belonging to Enoch J. Drebber, matching the linen initials, no purse, but loose money of £7.13, pocket edition of Boccaccio's Decameron, with the name Joseph Stangerson on the flyleaf, 2 letters, one to E. J. Drebber and one to Joseph Stangerson. Address: American Exchange, Strand, both to be held until called for. Both letters come from Guion Steamship Company, referring to sailings from Liverpool. Seems this man was about to return to New York. Have you made inquiries about Stangerson? Immediately, said Gregson. I've advertised everywhere and sent a man to American Exchange, but no word yet. Have you telegraphed to Cleveland? Yes, this morning. How did you phrase your inquiries? We detailed the circumstances and asked for any useful information. You asked only about Stangerson? Nothing else? Did you not consider any crucial points? Will you telegraph again? I've said all I have to say, Gregson replied, offended. Holmes chuckled, about to speak, when Lestrade returned, rubbing his hands pompously. He was clearly pleased to have scored a point against Gregson. Mr. Gregson, he said, I've just made a discovery of the highest importance, one which would have been missed had I not carefully examined the walls. His eyes sparkled excitedly. Come here, he said, bustling in. Stand there. Lighting a match against his boot, he held it to the wall. "Look at that," he exclaimed triumphantly. I noticed the wallpaper peeling in one corner, revealing coarse yellow plaster. Written across this bare patch in blood-red letters, a single word. "Rick." "What do you think?" asked Lestrade like a showman. "This was missed because it was in the darkest corner," he continued. "The murderer wrote it with his own blood. See the smear of it trickling down. This rules out suicide." "Why choose that corner?" "Because the candle on the mantelpiece was lit, and this corner was the brightest, not darkest." "Now what does it mean, having found it?" Gregson asked dismissively. "It means the writer was starting the name Rachel but was disturbed before finishing. Mark my words, when this case is solved, a woman named Rachel will be involved. You may scoff, Holmes, but the old hound still beats the lot." "I beg your pardon," Holmes said, laughing and ruffling the detective's temper. "You're the first to spot it, and yes, it looks like a clue left by the other participant in last night's mystery. I haven't examined the room fully yet, but with your permission I shall do so now." Taking a tape measure and a large magnifying glass from his pocket, Holmes trotted silently about the room, stopping, kneeling, even lying flat on his face. He seemed to forget us, muttering a running commentary of exclamations, groans, whistles, and tiny cries of encouragement and hope. Watching him, I thought of a well-trained foxhound dashing through cover, tracking a lost scent with relentless eagerness. For over 20 minutes he measured distances between nearly invisible marks, applied his tape to walls in ways I could not understand, and carefully collected a pile of gray dust from the floor, stored in an envelope. Finally, he scrutinized the blood-written word on the wall with minute precision. Satisfied, he pocketed his tools. "They say genius is an infinite capacity for taking pains," he smiled. "A poor definition, but it fits detective work." Gregson and Lestrade watched with curiosity and some contempt, failing to see that Holmes's smallest actions were aimed at definite, practical ends. "What do you think, sir?" they asked. "It would rob you of credit if I interfered," Holmes said, dripping sarcasm. "You're doing well, and it'd be a pity to hinder you. Keep me informed, I'll help as I can. Meanwhile, I'd like to speak with the constable who found the body. Can you give me his name and address?" Lestrade flipped through his notebook. "John Rance. He's off duty now, but you'll find him at 46 Audley Court, Kennington Park Gate." Holmes took note. "Come along, doctor," he said. "We'll visit him. Here's something that might help you. There's been murder, and the murderer was a man, over 6 feet tall in his prime with small feet for his height. He wore coarse, square-toed boots and smoked a Trichinopoly cigar. He arrived with his victim in a four-wheeled cab, drawn by a horse with 3 old shoes and 1 new on its off foreleg. Likely, the murderer had a florid face, and his right-hand fingernails were unusually long. These clues may assist." Gregson and Lestrade exchanged incredulous glances. "If he was murdered, how?" "Poison," Holmes said curtly and strode off. "One more thing, rake is German for revenge. So don't waste time chasing Miss Rachel." With that, he left the two detectives agape. Chapter 4: What John Rance Had to Tell. It was 1 o'clock when we left Lauriston Gardens. Holmes led me to a nearby telegraph office and sent a long telegram. Then he hailed a cab, instructing the driver to take us to the constable's address. "There's no substitute for first-hand evidence," he said. "My mind's made up, but we may as well learn what we can." "You amaze me, Holmes. Surely you aren't as sure as you pretend." "There's no room for error. The first thing I noticed arriving was a cab's wheel ruts by the curb. No rain for a week before last night, so the deep marks prove the cab was there then. The horse's hoofprints show one shoe more vivid than the others. That's the new one. The cab was present after the rain began and not in the morning," Gregson confirmed, "so it must have brought the men during the night." "Simple enough. But how about the other man's height?" 9 times out of 10, a man's height can be gauged by stride length. I measured the man's stride on the clay outside and dust inside and calculated accordingly. Men write on walls instinctively at their eye level. The word was just above 6 feet. Child's play for me. And his age? Well, a man who can stride 4.5 feet effortlessly isn't quite old. There was a puddle on the garden walk he crossed. Patent leather boots went around it, square-toed boots hopped over. No mystery. Just applying the observational deductions I advocated. Anything else puzzling? The fingernails and Trichinopoly cigar? The writing was done with a man's forefinger dipped in blood. My lens showed slight scratches on the plaster, which wouldn't happen if the nails had been trimmed. I gathered some dark, flaky ash from the floor, characteristic of a Trichinopoly cigar. I've studied cigar ash intensively, even written a monograph on it. I can distinguish at a glance the ash of any known brand. It's such details that separate the skilled detective from the Gregsons and Lestrades. And the florid face? A bolder guess but accurate. You must not ask now. My mind's not settled on that. I rubbed my brow. My head spinning. The more one thinks, the murkier it gets. How did two men enter an empty house? What became of the cabman? How could one force another to take poison? Where did the blood come from? What was the motive if there was no robbery? Why a woman's ring? Why write rake before fleeing? I cannot reconcile these facts. Holmes smiled approvingly. You summarize the difficulties well. Much remains obscure, but I have firm conclusions on the main facts. Lestrade's find was a blind, to mislead by suggesting socialism and secret societies. The word wasn't written by a German. The A, if you noticed, was printed like a Latin character, unlike a true German's writing. So it's a clumsy fake designed to misdirect. I won't tell you more yet. Explain a conjurer's tricks and you rob him of credit. I fear you'll see me as quite ordinary. That will never be, I said. You've made detection almost an exact science. He flushed with pleasure at my earnest words. He took flattery about his art as deeply as any maiden about her beauty. I'll tell you one last thing, Holmes said. Patent Leathers and Square Toes arrived together, likely arm in arm. Inside, Patent Leathers stood still while Square Toes paced, his strides growing longer and more excited as he spoke, no doubt working himself into a fury. Then tragedy struck. That's all I know. The rest is surmise. We have a good base, let's hurry though. I want to hear Norman Neruda at Halley's concert this afternoon. As we threaded a path through bleak streets, the cab stopped at Audley Court, a narrow alley in a grim quadrangle of dingy homes. We dodged dirty children and lines of faded laundry, then arrived at number 46, marked RANCE. Inside a small parlor, we awaited the constable. He came, irritated at being disturbed. I made my report at the office, he said. Holmes took a half-sovereign and toyed with it. We want to hear your version firsthand. Rance sat, brows furrowed to avoid leaving anything out. I'll tell you from the start. My beat's 10 at night to 6 in the morning. At 11 there was a fight at the White Hart, but other than that, quiet. At 1 it started to rain. I met Harry Murcher from Holland Grove Beat. We stood chatting at Henrietta Street corner. Around 2 I thought I should check down Brixton Road. It was nasty and lonely. Not a soul around, just a cab or two. I was strolling, craving a hot gin, when a light caught my eye in that house's window. I knew those 2 Lauriston Gardens houses were empty. The owner won't fix the drains and the last tenant there died of typhoid. So I was startled to see a light. When I reached the door. You stopped and walked back to the garden gate, Holmes interrupted. Why? Rance jumped, amazed. How do you know that? I was scared, thinking it might be him who died of typhoid near the drains. So I walked back looking for Murcher's lantern, no sign of him or anyone else. No one on the street? Not a living soul, not a dog. Then I pulled myself together, went back and pushed the door open. All was quiet inside. In the room with the light burning, a red wax candle on the mantel, by its flicker I saw. Yes, you paced the room, knelt by the body, tried the kitchen door and then... Rance leapt up, fearful and suspicious. Where did you hide to see that? You seem to know more than you should. Holmes laughed and tossed him a card. Don't arrest me for murder. I'm a hound, not a wolf. Gregson or Lestrade will answer for that. Go on. Rance sat again, still mystified. I went back to the gate and my whistle. That brought Murcher and 2 others. Was the street empty then? As empty as anyone useful goes. What do you mean? Rance grinned. I've seen many drunks, but never one so utterly drunk as that cove. He was at the gate when I came out, leaning on the railings, singing at full pitch about Columbine's newfangled banner or something. Couldn't stand, much less help. What was he like? Asked Holmes. Rance, irritated, replied, an uncommon drunk sort. I and Murcher propped him up. Tall, with a red face, his lower part wrapped around. That's enough, Holmes said. What became of him? We had our hands full and didn't watch him, Rance grumbled. But I reckon he found his way home all right. How was he dressed? Brown overcoat. Did he have a whip? No. Must have left it behind, Holmes muttered. Did you see or hear a cab after? No. Here's a half-sovereign. Holmes stood, hat in hand. Rance, you'll never rise in this force. Your head should be as useful as ornaments. You might have gained sergeant's stripes last night. The man you held is the key. No use arguing, he's the one we want. Come along, doctor. We left Rance behind, incredulous but uncomfortable. The blundering fool, Holmes said bitterly. To have such luck and not seize it. I'm still in the dark, I said. The description fits your suspect, but why come back after leaving? Criminals don't do that. Chapter 5. Our advertisement brings a visitor. Our morning's exertions had worn me out, and by afternoon I was utterly fatigued. After Holmes left for the concert, I lay down on the sofa, hoping to catch a couple of hours' sleep. It was useless. My mind was too restless, filled with strange fancies and surmises. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the distorted baboon-like face of the murdered man. The impression was so sinister that I found it hard to feel anything but relief that he had been removed from the world. If ever human features bespoke the vilest malice, they were those of Enoch J. Drebber of Cleveland. Still, justice must be done, and his depravity was no excuse before the law. The more I pondered, the stranger Holmes's hypothesis, that the man had been poisoned, seemed. I recalled how he had sniffed the victim's lips and was sure he had detected something. Yet, if not poison, what caused death without wound or signs of strangulation? And whose blood stained the floor so thickly? There were no signs of struggle and no weapons. As long as these mysteries remained, I doubted either Holmes or myself could sleep. Though calm and confident outwardly, I sensed he had already formed a theory explaining the facts. I just had no clue what it was. He was late returning, so late the concert could not explain it. Dinner was on the table before he appeared. It was magnificent, he said as he took his seat. Do you recall Darwin's remark about music? That the power to produce and appreciate it existed among humans long before speech? Perhaps that is why music moves us so deeply, vague memories from those misty centuries when the world was newborn. That's a broad idea, I replied. One must be as broad as nature to interpret nature, he answered. What's wrong? You seem off. This Brixton Road affair bothers you. To be frank, it does, I admitted. I should be hardened after Afghanistan. I saw comrades hacking at Maywand without losing nerve. I understand. This mystery rouses the imagination. Where there is none, there is no horror. Have you seen the evening paper? No. It gives a fair account but omits that when the body was raised, a woman's wedding ring fell to the floor. Good, it doesn't mention that. Why? Look at this advertisement. He tossed me the paper. I had one sent to every paper this morning right after the incident. I glanced. The first notice in the found column read, in Brixton Road, this morning, a plain gold wedding ring was found in the roadway between the White Hart Tavern and Holland Grove. Apply Dr. Watson, 221B Baker Street, between 8 and 9 this evening. Excuse using your name, Holmes said. If I used mine, fools would recognize it and meddle. That's fine, I said. But what if someone comes? I don't have a ring. Oh yes, you do. He handed me a ring almost identical to the one found. And who do you expect will answer this ad? The man in the brown coat, our florid friend with square toes. If not him, an accomplice. Wouldn't he fear a trap? Not at all. If I'm right, he'd risk anything over losing that ring. I believe he dropped it stooping over Drebber's body and didn't notice. Later, after leaving, he realized and hurried back but found police already inside because he'd foolishly left the candle burning. To seem less suspicious at the gate, he feigned drunkenness. Imagine yourself in his place. Upon reading tonight's papers, he'd spot the ad and be overjoyed. To him there'd be no reason to fear. He'll come. You'll see him within an hour. And then? Oh, leave that to me. Have you any arms? My old service revolver and a few cartridges. Clean and load it well. He'll be desperate, and though I'll surprise him, best be ready for anything. I went to my bedroom and did as advised. Returning, Holmes was scraping his violin. The plot thickens, he said. I've had a reply to my American telegram. My theory stands. And what is it? My fiddle needs new strings, he joked. Put your pistol in your pocket. When he arrives, speak calmly. Leave the rest to me. Don't stare him down. It's 8 o'clock, I said, checking my watch. He'll be here shortly. Open the door slightly and lock the key inside. Thank you. This queer little book I found yesterday, De Jure Inter Gentes, published in Latin at Liège in 1642. Charles I's head was still firm when printed. The printer was Philippe de Croix. The flyleaf reads, Ex Libris Guglielmi White. Who was William White? Some pragmatic 17th century lawyer, no doubt. His handwriting has a legal twist. Here he comes, I think. Sharp bell. Holmes quietly moved his chair toward the door. The servant's footsteps passed, the door latch clicked. A clear but harsh voice asked, "Does Dr. Watson live here?" The servant's reply was unheard. The door closed and uncertain, shuffling footsteps came slowly, then a soft tap. "Come in," I called. Instead of the expected violent man, a very old, wrinkled woman hobbled in, stunned by the sudden brightness. She curtsied, blinking bleared eyes, fumbling nervously in her pocket. Holmes's face grew mournful and I barely held back a laugh. She produced an evening paper, pointing at our ad. "This brought me good sirs," she said, curtsying again. "A gold wedding ring in Brixton Road. It belongs to my girl Sally. She married but a year past, her husband steward aboard a Union boat. Were he to find her ring gone, he'd be furious, especially when he's been drinking. Last night she went to the circus with—" "Is that the ring?" I asked. "Thank God," she cried. "Sally'll be a happy woman tonight. That's the ring. What's your address?" 13 Duncan Street, Houndsditch. "Quite a way." "The Brixton Road isn't between a circus and Houndsditch," Holmes said sharply. She turned, eyes red-rimmed, staring at him. "You asked for my address," she said. "Sally lodges at 3 Mayfield Place, Peckham." "And your name?" "Sawyer. Hers is Dennis, married to Tom Dennis, a smart, clean lad while at sea no steward thought more of, but on shore with women and drink." "Here's your ring, Mrs. Sawyer," I interrupted at Holmes's nod. "It clearly belongs to your daughter and I'm glad to return it." With many mumblings and thanks she pocketed the ring and shuffled away. Holmes sprang up and rushed into his room. Moments later he returned, wrapped in an overcoat and cravat. "I'll follow her," he said hurriedly. "She must be an accomplice and will lead me to him. Wait up." Before she'd left, Holmes was gone. Watching from the window, I saw her hobbling along the other side with Holmes some distance behind. Either his whole theory is wrong, or he's now at the heart of the mystery, I thought. Sleep was impossible till I heard what he'd found. Close on 9 he set out. I sat puffing my pipe, flipping pages of Henri Murger's Vie de Bohème. 10 passed, then the maid's footsteps on their way to bed, 11 and the landlady's heavier tread. Near midnight I heard his latchkey. His face told me he'd failed. Amusement battled with chagrin, until laughter won and he burst out heartily. "I wouldn't have Scotland Yard know it," he laughed. "I've chaffed them so much they'd never let me hear the end of it. I can laugh because I'll be even with them soon enough." "What happened?" I asked. "Oh, I don't mind being self-deprecating." The creature, after limping long, hailed a passing cab. I caught her address but she sang it so loud there was no need. "Drive to 13 Duncan Street, Houndsditch." I thought it genuine and seated safely behind her we rattled away. I jumped off before the door, strolled lightly down the street. The cab stopped, the driver opened the door expectantly. No one got out. The driver cursed bitterly, his passenger was gone, leaving him no fare. At number 13, a respectable paperhanger named Keswick owns the house. No one named Sawyer or Dennis had ever lived there. "You don't mean to say," I gasped, "that the old woman escaped from a moving cab unnoticed?" "Old woman be damned," Holmes snapped. "We were fooled by an incomparable actor in disguise. The man knew he was followed and used this ruse to shake me off. He's not as lonely as I thought. He has friends willing to take risks. Doctor, you look done for. Take my advice, turn in." I was weary and obeyed, leaving Holmes by the fire. Long into the night I heard his violin's melancholy wail, still pondering his baffling case. Chapter 6 Tobias Gregson shows what he can do. The next day the papers were full of the Brixton mystery. Each carried lengthy accounts, some editorials. I still keep clippings and extracts. The Daily Telegraph called it one of the strangest tragedies, citing the German victim's name, the cryptic message and absence of motive, suggesting political refugees or revolutionists. It mentioned socialists in America: Vemgericht, Aqua Tofana, Carbonari, Martianist de Brinvilliers, Darwin, Malthus, Ratcliffe highway murders, then urged government vigilance over foreigners. The Standard blamed lawless crimes on liberal administrations unsettling the masses. It noted victim Drebber staying weeks in London, boarding at Madame Charpentier's in Camberwell with Private Secretary Stangerson. They left on Tuesday the 4th for Liverpool station, then vanished until Drebber's body was found far from Euston. Stangerson's whereabouts are unknown. Lestrade and Gregson of Scotland Yard are on the case, expected to shed light soon. The Daily News deemed the crime political, reflecting continental despots' hatred and driving disgruntled men here, men with rigorous honor codes punishing breaches by death. It urged finding Stangerson and investigating Drebber's habits. Gregson's sharp work in finding the boarding address was praised. Holmes and I read these notices with amusement. I told you Lestrade and Gregson would score somehow, Holmes said. That depends on the outcome. Oh, it doesn't matter. If the man is caught, thanks to them. If he escapes, despite them. Heads I win, tails you lose. Un sot trouver toujours un plus sot qu'à admire. What's that? I asked. At that moment, the landlady's disgust echoed with many footsteps in the hall. It's the Baker Street detective force, Holmes said gravely, as half a dozen of the dirtiest ragged street boys burst in. Tension. Holmes commanded sharply. The 6 stood in a line like disreputable statuettes. From now on, send Wiggins alone to report. The rest wait outside. Found it yet, Wiggins? No, sir. Hardly expected. Here's your wages. He gave each a shilling. Off with you. Better bring progress next time. They scampered down like rats, shrill voices soon heard outside. More work is got from one of those urchins than a dozen police, Holmes remarked. Officials frighten witnesses silent. These kids go everywhere and hear everything. Sharp as needles, but need organization. Are they working on the Brixton case? Yes, I want a point clarified. It's a matter of time. Hello. Here's Gregson looking pleased. Bound for us. Yes, he's stopping now. A loud bell rang. Straight away, fair-haired Gregson, breathless, climbed the stairs 3 steps at a time and burst in. My dear fellow, he cried, shaking Holmes's unresponsive hand, congratulate me. I have the whole thing as clear as day. A flicker of anxiety crossed Holmes's face. Do you mean you're on the right track? The right track. Why, sir, we have the man locked up. And his name? Arthur Charpentier, sub-lieutenant in Her Majesty's Navy, Gregson said pompously, rubbing hands and swelling chest. Holmes gave a sigh of relief, relaxing into a smile. Take a seat and try one of these cigars, he said. Tell us how you did it. Want whiskey and water? If you please, Gregson answered. The strain of recent days has worn me out, not physically but mentally. You'll understand, Holmes, as fellow brain workers. You overstate, Holmes retorted gravely. Now, how did you reach this gratifying result? Gregson settled in an armchair, puffing complacently. Suddenly he slapped his thigh, laughing. The best of it is, he cried, that fool Lestrade, who fancies himself smart, is on the wrong scent. He's after Stangerson, who had no hand in the crime. I'm sure he's caught him by now. Gregson laughed until choking. How did you find your clue? Of course, Dr. Watson, this is just between us. Our first challenge was tracing the American's background. Some wait for answers to ads or volunteers, not to bias Gregson. Remember the hat by the body? Yes, said Holmes. John Underwood and Sons, 129 Camberwell Road. Gregson looked crestfallen. I had no idea you noticed, he said. Have you been there? No. Ha, said Gregson, relieved. Never neglect a small chance. A great mind notices none are small, Holmes said sentiently. Well, I visited Underwood, asked if they'd sold that hat. They found it at once, sent to Drebber at Charpentier's boarding house, Torquay Terrace, so I got the address. Smart, very smart. Then Madame Charpentier. She was pale and distressed. Her daughter, a fine girl, was red-eyed and trembling. Noticed that. I smelled a rat. You know the feeling when you find the right scent. A thrill. Have you heard about your late boarder, Mr. Enoch J. Drebber, of Cleveland? I asked. The mother nodded, speechless. The daughter burst into tears. I felt sure they knew something. When did Mr. Drebber leave for the train? I pressed. At 8, she stammered. His secretary, Mr. Stangerson, said 2 trains left at 9:15 and 11. He was to catch the first. Was that the last you saw of him? The woman went livid, whispered a husky yes. Silence, then the daughter spoke calmly. No good comes of lies, mother. Let us tell the truth. We saw Mr. Drebber again. God forgive you, cried Madame, throwing up hands and sinking back. You've murdered your brother. Arthur would rather we spoke the truth, said the girl. Tell me all now, I urged. Half-truths are worse. And you don't know how much we know. On your head be it, Alice, cried her mother. Then turning to me, I never meant to tell, but now I must. My son Arthur is innocent, despite suspicion. His character and profession forbid guilt. Be frank with the facts, I said. Innocent or not, it's best. Perhaps Alice should leave us now, she said. The daughter withdrew. This is difficult to say, but since she spoke first, I'll explain it all. Good, I said. Mr. Drebber stayed nearly 3 weeks. He and his secretary had traveled Europe. Copenhagen was their last stop. Stangerson was quiet, Drebber coarse and brutish. The night they arrived he became heavily drunk, often drunk after noon. He was familiar and coarse with the maids. Worst of all, he behaved indecently to Alice, once even seized and embraced her. His secretary reproached him. "Why didn't you act sooner? Couldn't you evict them?" She blushed. "I wish I had given notice that day. But they paid £14 a week, good money in the slack season. I'm a widow with a son in the Navy. I didn't want to lose the income. That last outrage was too much and I gave notice. That's why they left." "Well?" My heart lifted when he drove away. "My son was on leave but I told him nothing. His temper is fierce and he's fond of his sister." After they left, a ring came and Drebber returned. He was excited and drunk, forced his way in, spoke incoherently about missing his train, then proposed to Alice she should elope. "You're of age," he said, "no law prevents it. I have money. Forget that old woman and come with me now." Alice was frightened and tried to escape, but he grabbed her wrist. I screamed. Arthur came in at that moment. A scuffle followed. I was too terrified to watch. When I looked, Arthur stood laughing with a stick. "He won't trouble us again," he said. "I'll see what he does." He left. Next day we heard of Drebber's death. She spoke haltingly and low, but I took shorthand notes carefully. "Exciting," Holmes said, yawning. "And then?" When she paused, I saw the case hinged on one thing. Fixing her with my gaze, "I have a way with women," I asked when Arthur returned. "I don't know." "Not know?" "No. He has a latchkey and let himself in." "After you went to bed?" "About 11. So he was away for at least 2 hours?" "Yes." "Maybe 4 or 5? "Yes." "What was he doing then?" "I don't know." She turned pale. Nothing more was possible. I found Lieutenant Charpentier, took 2 officers and arrested him. When I touched him on the shoulder, warning him to come quietly, he said boldly, "I suppose you will arrest me for Drebber's death." We had said nothing, making this suspicious. "Very," Holmes agreed. He still carried the stout oak cudgel his mother described when he confronted Drebber. "What's your theory?" "That Charpentier followed Drebber to Brixton Road. A fresh fight ended with Drebber struck in the stomach, killed without mark. The wet night left no witnesses. Charpentier dragged the body into the empty house. The candle, blood, writing, and ring were all tricks to mislead the police." "Well done," said Holmes warmly. "Gregson, you improve. We'll make something of you yet." "I flatter myself," Gregson replied proudly. Charpentier volunteered that Drebber saw him, took a cab to escape, met an old shipmate and walked with him, but gave no clear address. I think the case fits neatly. I find amusement thinking of Lestrade's mistake. By Jove, here he is. Lestrade entered, less confident than usual, disheveled, troubled. He had clearly come to consult Holmes but appeared embarrassed. "This case is extraordinary," he said, "a most baffling affair." "Ah, you agree, Mr. Lestrade?" Gregson said triumphantly. "Found the secretary, Joseph Stangerson?" "Mr. Stangerson," Lestrade said gravely, "was murdered at Halliday's private hotel about 6 this morning." Chapter 7 Light in the Darkness. The news Lestrade brought was so sudden and important that we were all stunned. Gregson jumped up, accidentally spilling the rest of his whiskey and water. I stared silently at Holmes, whose lips tightened and brows furrowed. "Stangerson too," he muttered. "The plot thickens." "It was thick enough already," grumbled Lestrade, sitting down. "Feels like a council of war here." "Are you sure of this intelligence?" Gregson asked hesitantly. "I just came from his room," said Lestrade. "I found out what happened first." "I've heard Gregson's take," Holmes said. "Would you share what you saw and did?" "Certainly," Lestrade answered, settling in. "I thought Stangerson was involved in Drebber's death. This new info shows I was wrong. I focused on finding the secretary. They were seen together at Euston around 8:30 p.m. on the 3rd. Drebber's body was found at 2 in the morning. I needed to know where Stangerson was from 8:30 until the murder and after. I telegraphed Liverpool, described him, and warned them to watch American boats. Then I called all hotels and lodging houses near Euston, reasoning that if they parted, he'd stay nearby overnight and revisit the station next morning. They likely agreed on a meeting place, Holmes remarked. And so they did. I searched all evening with no luck. Early this morning at 8, I reached Halliday's private hotel in Little George Street. I asked if a Mr. Stangerson lived there. They said yes, he'd been waiting for a gentleman for 2 days. "Where is he now?" Upstairs in bed. He wanted to be called at 9. I went to see him immediately. My sudden arrival might unsettle him, making him say something careless. The boots showed me the second-floor room. Just as he pointed it out, I noticed something sickening. A thin ribbon of blood curled beneath the door, meandering across the passage to a small pool by the skirting board. I cried out. The boots nearly fainted. The door was locked inside, but we forced it open. The window was wide open. There, huddled near it, lay a man in his nightclothes, dead some time, limbs stiff and cold. Turning him over, the boots recognized him as Joseph Stangerson, the gentleman who'd rented the room. Cause of death: a deep stab to the left side, likely piercing the heart. And here's the strangest part. What do you suppose was above the murdered man? I felt chill and dread even before Holmes answered. Rake, written in blood. That's it, Lestrade said in awe, and all three of us fell silent. The cold, methodical acts of this unknown assassin added fresh horror to the crime. My usually steady nerves tingled. The man was seen, Lestrade continued. A milk boy on his way to the dairy past the lane behind the hotel. He saw a ladder raised to a second-floor window left wide open. Looking back, he saw a man descend quietly as if a workman. He thought it odd for one to be working so early. The man was tall, had a reddish face, and wore a long brownish coat. He must have lingered after the murder. Blood-stained water was found in the basin where he'd washed his hands, and marks on the sheets where he'd wiped his knife deliberately. I glanced at Holmes, noting how the description matched his own. Yet Holmes showed no satisfaction. Found nothing else to identify him? No. Stangerson had Drebber's purse, but that was usual. He handled the money. There was £80 inside, untouched. Whatever the motives, robbery wasn't one. The dead man carried no papers or notes except a telegram from Cleveland a month earlier, saying only, "J.H. is in Europe," without signature. Nothing else. A novel lay on the bed, the one he'd read to sleep. His pipe rested on a chair. A glass of water stood on the table. On the window ledge, a small ointment box held a couple of pills. Holmes leapt up, eyes alight. "The final link," he cried. "My case is complete." Gregson and Lestrade stared, amazed. "I hold all the threads tangled so far," Holmes said confidently, "enough to trace the story from Drebber's parting with Stangerson at the station to the latter's death, as if I'd seen it myself. Will you find those pills?" "I have them." Lestrade produced a small white box. "I kept them safe, though I didn't think much of them." "Let me see. Doctor, are those ordinary pills?" They were small, round, pearly gray, almost translucent in light. "Given their transparency, I guess they dissolve in water," I noted. "Exactly. Bring the poor terrier the landlady wanted put down." I fetched the dog. It breathed heavily and seemed near death. Its snow-white muzzle showed it had lived far beyond normal years. I placed it gently on a cushion. "I'll cut one pill in two," Holmes said, drawing his penknife. "One half goes back in the box. The other into this wineglass with a teaspoon of water. See how it dissolves." "Interesting, though I don't see what it proves concerning Stangerson's death," Lestrade muttered, feeling mocked. "Patience. You'll see it matters. I'll add a little milk to make it palatable." He stirred the mixture and offered it to the dog. The terrier lapped it readily, but nothing happened. I watched with the two detectives, expecting some effect, but the dog simply lay breathing hard, unaffected. Holmes's face fell. He bit his lip, drummed his fingers, and showed deep impatience. The detective smiled smugly. I felt sorry for him. "Impossible it can be coincidence," he finally cried, pacing. "The pills I suspected at Drebber's death are here too, yet inert. What can this mean? Surely my reasoning isn't false. And yet the dog is fine. I have it." He dashed to the box, cut the other pill, dissolved it, added milk, and gave it again. Almost instantly the dog convulsed, then lay rigid and still. Holmes exhaled deeply, wiping sweat from his brow. I should trust more. When facts seem to conflict with deductions, they usually admit another meaning. One pill is deadly poison, the other harmless. I should have known that before seeing the box. His words startled me, though the dead dog proved his point. Slowly clarity dawned. "All this seems strange because you missed the crucial clue early on," Holmes explained. "I caught it by luck, and all that followed confirmed it. Things that puzzled you made it clearer to me. Don't mistake strangeness for mystery. The commonest crime is often most mysterious because it lacks clues. This murder would be harder to solve if the body had lain simply in the street without those strange, shocking details that make it remarkable. Such details, rather than baffling, help me." Gregson, impatient, finally said, Look, Holmes, we admire your smarts and methods. But enough theory, this is about catching a man. I've built a case but was wrong. Charpentier couldn't be involved this time. Lestrade went after Stangerson and was wrong too. You hint you know more, but now we have a right to ask. Can you name the murderer? I agree with Gregson, Lestrade said. We've tried and failed. You say you have all the evidence. Will you no longer keep it from us? Delaying arrest may let him kill again. Pressed, Holmes hesitated, then said, there will be no more murders. You can dismiss that worry. You ask if I know the assassin's name. I do. But knowing it is small comfort compared to catching him. I expect soon to do so, perhaps on my own. It requires delicate care. We're dealing with a desperate, clever man supported by an equally cunning associate. So long as he suspects no one has a clue, we have a chance. If he even suspects, he'd vanish instantly among 4 million Londoners. I mean no offense, but these men exceed the police force, which is why I've worked alone. If I fail, I take full blame. For now, once I can communicate safely, I will. Gregson and Lestrade looked displeased at Holmes's slight of the police. Neither spoke before a tap drew our attention to young Wiggins, leader of the street kids. Please, sir, Wiggins said, touching his forehead, the cab's downstairs. Good boy, Holmes smiled. Why not use this at Scotland Yard? He showed steel handcuffs. Notice how the spring works, they snap instantly. The old kind suffices, Lestrade said, if only we could find the man to wear them. Oh, very good, Holmes grinned. Cabman, help me with my baggage, please. I was surprised as Holmes said nothing of a journey. While fastening a portmanteau, the cabman entered sullenly. Holmes asked for help with a buckle without turning. The cabman came close. Suddenly, with a sharp click and jangle, Holmes leapt up. Gentlemen, he said with flashing eyes, meet Mr. Jefferson Hope, the murderer of Enoch Drebber and Joseph Stangerson. In a moment, Holmes's triumphant face, the cabman's savage, stunned glare at the handcuffs, magically clasped on, seared into my memory. We stood frozen briefly. Then, roaring, the prisoner wrenched free, threw himself through the window. Wood and glass broke, but before escaping, Gregson, Lestrade, and Holmes seized him like hunting hounds. A fierce struggle followed. Hope's convulsive strength threw us off repeatedly. His mangled face and hands bled, but he fought on. Only when Lestrade grasped him by the neckcloth and half-strangled him did he yield. We felt safer after pinioning his feet. We have the cab, Holmes said. It will take him to Scotland Yard. Now, gentlemen, he smiled, the mystery is over. You may ask me anything without fear I'll refuse. Part 2, The Country of the Saints. Chapter 1 on the Great Alkali Plain. In the heart of North America lies an arid desert, a barrier to civilization for many years. From the Sierra Nevada to Nebraska, and from the Yellowstone River in the north to the Colorado in the south, stretches a land of desolation and silence. Mountains capped with snow, dark valleys, rushing rivers through jagged canyons, and vast plains dusted with saline alkali, all harsh, barren, inhospitable. No human dwells here permanently. Occasionally bands of Pawnees or Blackfeet pass through seeking hunting grounds but hurry to escape. Coyotes skulk in scrub, buzzards flap heavily overhead, and clumsy grizzlies roam ravines, scavenging what they can among rocks. These alone inhabit the wilderness. Few sights are more dreary than from Sierra Blanco's northern slope. A vast flat plain spreads out dusted with alkali patches and dwarfed chaparral bushes. On the distant horizon stand mountain peaks rugged and snow-flecked. No sign of life stirs, no bird in the steel blue sky, no movement on dull gray earth, only silence, complete and overwhelming. Life. Hardly any, though one sees a rutted pathway winding across the plain, worn by wheels and many travelers. Here and there glisten white bones, some large belonging to oxen, smaller bones of men. For over 1,500 miles, this grim caravan route is marked by remains of those who fell by the wayside. On May 4, 1847, overlooking this scene stood a solitary traveler, a man whose appearance might seem a genius or demon of this land. Near 40 or 60, lean and haggard, his brown, parchment-like skin stretched tight over bones, hair and beard streaked with white, eyes sunken yet unnaturally bright. His hand on his rifle was skeletal. Leaning on his weapon, his tall, bony frame suggested strength, but his tattered clothes and gaunt face betrayed a man dying of hunger and thirst. He had painfully descended a ravine to this spot, hoping to see water signs. But the vast salt plain and distant mountains showed none, no plants, no trees, no water gleam. He realized his wanderings ended here. Sitting beside a boulder, he muttered, "Why not here as well as a feather bed 20 years hence?" Beside him lay a heavy bundle in a gray shawl, dropped violently. From it came a soft moan and a small frightened face with bright brown eyes and two speckled dimpled fists. "You've hurt me," the child said. "Have I though?" he answered penitently, unwrapping her, a pretty girl about 5 wearing neat shoes and a pink frock with linen apron. Pale and wan but less worn than her companion. "How's it now?" he asked, concerned as she rubbed the back of her head. "Kiss it and make it well," she said solemnly. "Mother used to." "Where's Mother?" "Mother's gone. I guess you'll see her soon." "Gone?" she said. "Funny, she didn't say goodbye. Usually did if going to Auntie's for tea. She's been gone for 3 days. Awfully dry. Any water or food?" "No, dearie. Just have patience for a while and you'll be all right. Lay your head on me, you'll feel better. It's hard to talk when lips are like leather. What's that you've got?" "Pretty things." "Fine things?" she cried, holding 2 shiny fragments of mica. "When home I'll give them to Brother Bob. You'll see prettier things soon," he said confidently. "Wait a bit. When we left the river we reckoned to find water, but the compass or map went wrong. Water ran out. Only a little for you and you couldn't wash," she cut in gravely, staring at his grimy face. "No, nor drink. Mr. Bender went first, then Indian Pete, Mrs. McGregor, Johnny Hones, and then your mother." "Then Mother's dead too," she sobbed. "Yes. All gone but you and me. I thought water might be this way, so I carried you on my shoulder, but we haven't done better. The chance is small." "Are we going to die?" "Looks like it. Why not say so before? You gave me a fright. But I guess if we die we'll be with Mother again." "Yes, dearie. And you too. I'll tell her how good you've been. I bet she greets us with water and buckwheat cakes, hot and toasted like Bob and me liked." "How soon?" "Don't know. Not long." His eyes fixed north where 3 tiny specks grew larger, 3 large brown buzzards, vultures of the west, circling above, then settling nearby. "Cocks and hens," she gleefully clapped, startling them. "Did God make this land?" "Sure," he said, surprised by the question. "He made Illinois and Missouri," she went on. "Guess someone else made this land. No water, no trees. Want to pray?" "Not night yet." "Doesn't matter. It's not proper but God won't mind. Say the prayers you said on the plains." "Why don't you say them?" "I forget. Haven't said since I was half your height." "Never too late. You start, I'll join in the chorus." "Need to kneel, you and me," she said, laying the shawl. "Put hands like this. Feels good." Strange sight, but only buzzards watched. Side by side they knelt, the chubby child and the worn adventurer, faces turned to the cloudless sky in heartfelt pleas for mercy. Her thin voice and his harsh one united in entreaty. When prayer ended, they sat in shadow until she fell asleep, resting on his breast. He watched, but weariness overcame him. 3 days and nights without rest had worn him down. His head sank until beard and golden curls mingled as both slept deeply. Had he remained awake a while longer, he would have seen dust rising far across the ALKALI plain, growing until revealing a vast caravan. Covered wagons, mounted horsemen, men and women on foot, children toddling or hidden beneath covers. Hardly an immigrant party but a forced nomadic people. A low roar stirred as iron-faced men, armed and sober, halted and consulted. "The wells lie to the right, brothers," said one grizzled man. "To the right of Sierra Blanco, then the Rio Grande," said another. "Fear not for water," cried a third. "He who drew it from rocks will not abandon his chosen." "Amen," all cried. Then, spotting a flutter of pink atop the bluff, horsemen reined in, guns unslung, watching for redskins. "There can't be known Indians here, we passed the Pawnees. No other tribes till mountains. Shall I scout ahead, Brother Stangerson?" "And I," echoed. "Leave horses here, we'll await below," the elder ordered. The scouts moved swiftly up the slope, silhouetted against the skyline, until they stopped, overcome with astonishment. Atop the hill lay a giant boulder, against which lay a long-bearded, gaunt man, sleeping peacefully. Beside him, a child clasped his neck, her golden hair on his breast, smiling playfully. 3 solemn buzzards nearby took flight dismayed. Awakened by cries, the pair looked about. The man's face showed disbelief as he took in the vast caravan below. "Must be delirium," he muttered. The child clung quietly to his coat. The rescuers convinced them it was no vision. One lifted the girl onto his shoulder, 2 steadied the man toward the wagons. "My name's John Ferrier," he explained, "and this little one are all that's left of 21. The rest died of thirst and hunger." Is she your child? I guess she is now. I saved her. None shall take her from me. She's Lucy Ferrier. Were you strangers? Seems a strong lot. Nigh 10,000, said a young man. We are God's persecuted, chosen by the angel Moroni. I never heard of him, Ferrier said. Don't mock the sacred, said another. We believe in sacred writings, Egyptian letters on golden plates given to Joseph Smith at Palmyra. From Nauvoo, Illinois, we fled violence and godlessness, seeking refuge, even here in the desert. The name Nauvoo stirred Ferrier's memory. Ah, Mormons, he said. We are. Where go you? We do not know. God's hand guides us through our prophet. You'll meet him, he will decide your fate. They reached the hill's base, joining crowds of pale women, laughing children, earnest men. Astonished at the youth and destitution of the pair, they followed to a grand wagon adorned gaudily, drawn by 6 horses. Beside the driver sat a man around 30, with a massive head and resolute gaze, clearly the leader. He laid aside a book and listened carefully. If we take you, Brother Stangerson, you must accept our faith, no wolves allowed. Better you perish here than corrupt the fold. Will you join us? Guess I'll come on any terms, Ferrier said firmly. The elders smiled, but their leader stayed stern. Feed them and teach the creed. We've delayed enough. Onward. To Zion. To Zion, the crowd echoed, rippling down the caravan until it got lost in distance. The wagons creaked and whips cracked, and the long procession resumed. The elder entrusted Ferrier and the child to his care. Rest here for now. Soon you'll recover. Remember, you belong to our religion. Brigham Young said it, and his voice echoes Joseph Smith, the voice of God. Chapter 2: The Flower of Utah. This is no place to recount the many trials endured by the Mormon immigrants before reaching their final haven. From the Mississippi to the Western Rockies, they struggled with almost unparalleled constancy. Savage men, wild beasts, hunger, thirst, fatigue, disease, all obstacles nature set in their path, they overcame with stubborn resolve. Yet even the stoutest hearts sank to their knees in prayer when from a hilltop, they saw the broad Utah Valley bathed in sunlight and learned it was the promised land, theirs forever. Brigham Young soon proved a skilled administrator and resolute leader. Maps and charts laid out the future city. Farms were apportioned according to rank, tradesmen and artisans set to work. Town squares and streets sprang up rapidly. In the country, draining, hedging, planting, and clearing transformed the land, and by next harvest the fields gleamed golden with wheat. All prospered, especially the great temple in the city's center, ever growing in size. From dawn to dusk, hammer and saw never ceased, as immigrants built their monument to their guide who had led them through peril. John Ferrier and the little girl adopted as his daughter Lucy, accompanied the Mormons to the journey's end. Little Lucy traveled comfortably in Elder Stangerson's wagon, sharing quarters with his 3 wives and headstrong 12-year-old son. Childhood resilience soon restored her from the shock of her mother's death, and she became beloved among the women, adapting to life in the moving canvas home. Meanwhile, Ferrier, recovered, proved a tireless hunter and invaluable guide. So well regarded was he that, upon settlement, he was granted as fertile and large a farm as any settler, save Young himself and the prominent elders Stangerson, Kemble, Johnston, and Drebber. On his farm, Ferrier built a substantial log house, expanded over the years into a roomy villa. Practical and shrewd, blessed with iron health, he worked tirelessly to improve and cultivate his land. In 3 years he outpaced neighbors, in 6 grew well-to-do, by 9 was wealthy, in 12 years he stood among Salt Lake City's most notable men. From the inland sea to the Wasatch Mountains, the name of John Ferrier was widely known. Yet he offended his co-religionists in one way: he steadfastly refused to set up a plural household like others. No argument swayed him. He gave no reason, only determination. Some blamed lukewarm faith, others accused greed or unwillingness to spend. Whispered tales spoke of a vanished fair-haired love on the Atlantic shore. Whatever the cause, Ferrier remained celibate. In every other respect he was a stalwart adherent, deemed orthodox and upright. Lucy grew up in the log house, helping her adoptive father. The mountain air and scent of pine replaced nurse and mother. Year after year she grew taller, stronger, cheeks rosy, step light. Travelers on the road past Ferrier's farm felt long-forgotten feelings stir, watching her graceful figure among wheat fields or riding her father's Mustang with the ease of a true Westerner. The tender bud blossomed into a flower. The year he became richest in the valley saw her bloom as a fair American girl unmatched along the Pacific slope. It was not Ferrier but another who first saw the child become a woman, such change being too subtle and gradual for a father to perceive until a voice or touch stirred her heart and revealed a new, larger nature within. Few forget that day or the small incident heralding their new life. For Lucy Ferrier, it came on a warm June morning. The Latter-day Saints bustled like bees. Fields and streets hummed with work. Along dusty roads came long strings of laden mules headed west. Gold fever had broken in California. The overland route passed through the city of the elect. Droves of cattle and weary immigrants filled the highways. Amid the throng, Lucy galloped adroitly, cheeks flushed and long chestnut hair streaming. Charged with an errand for her father, she dashed onward, fearless and focused. Worn travelers and stoic Indians alike marveled at her pale beauty. At the city's edge, a herd of cattle blocked the road, driven by wild herdsmen. Impatient, Lucy guided her horse toward a gap, but beasts closed behind her, trapping her amid fierce, long-horned bullocks. Skilled though she was riding through, her mount was startled by a horn's violent contact, rearing wildly. Each plunge threatened to unseat her into danger amid the thrashing beasts. Overcome by swirling dust and heat, she feared losing grip, but a kindly voice reassured her as a sinewy, brown hand grasped her horse's curb and led them through the drove to safety. "You're not hurt, miss?" said her savior respectfully. She looked up, laughing nervously. "I'm awfully frightened. Who'd have thought Pancho was so scared by cows?" "Thank God you stayed in the saddle," he said earnestly. Tall, fierce, mounted on a roan, rough hunter's clothes and rifle slung, he said, "I guess you're John Ferrier's daughter. I saw you leave. If he's the same Ferrier my father and he were close." "Hadn't you better ask him yourself?" she teased. The young man smiled, eyes sparkling. "I'll do that. We've been prospecting in the Nevada mountains and aren't in shape for visits. If he's anything like you say, he'll take us as we are." "He owes you much and so do I," she said. "He cares for me. If those cows had trampled me, he'd never get over it." "Neither would I," the young man said. "You? Doesn't matter much to you, you aren't even a friend." His face darkened, she laughed aloud. "I didn't mean it. Of course you're a friend now. You must visit us. I must go now or father won't trust me again. Goodbye." "Goodbye," he said, doffing his sombrero, kissing her hand. She flicked her Mustang's flanks and galloped away in dust. Young Jefferson Hope and his mates rode on dour and silent. Having prospected silver, they sought capital to work lodes. Until meeting the fair girl, speculative ventures were all he imagined. Her frank beauty stirred his volcanic heart deeply. When she vanished, he felt a life crisis. No silver nor venture mattered as much as this all-consuming love. This was not capricious youth, but the fierce passion of a strong-willed man accustomed to winning. He called at Ferrier's often, becoming a familiar figure at the farm. Ferrier, secluded by valley life, was eager for news of the outside world. Jefferson told tales of fortune and trials in California's wild days. Trapper, scout, ranchman, adventurer. He gained esteem with Ferrier praising him. Lucy's blushing cheeks and bright eyes betrayed her secret. Her honest father might not see it, but Hope did. One summer evening he galloped to the gate, where Lucy awaited. Throwing reins over the fence, he strode to her. "I'm off, Lucy," he said, holding her hands, gazing tenderly. "Won't ask you now, but will you be ready when I return?" "When will that be?" She blushed and laughed. 2 months at most. I'll claim you then, my darling. No one stands between us." "And father?" "He's given consent, if we get the mines working. I'm confident." "Oh, if you and father planned it all, then all's said," she whispered, nestling close. "Thank God," he said huskily, kissing her. "It's settled. The longer I stay, the harder it is to go. They're waiting at the canyon. Goodbye, darling, 2 months and I'll be back." He mounted and galloped away without looking back. She watched till he disappeared, then returned inside, the happiest girl in Utah. Chapter 3 John Ferrier Talks with the Prophet. 3 weeks passed since Jefferson Hope and his companions left Salt Lake City. Ferrier's heart was heavy, thinking of the lad's return and losing his adopted daughter. Yet Lucy's bright face comforted him. Deep down he resolved never to let his daughter marry a Mormon, regarding it as shameful. Opinions on this were dangerous in these parts. Unorthodox views were whispered only in fear of retribution. The persecuted had turned persecutors, their secret machinery silent yet terrible. Those opposing the church disappeared, their wives and children left ignorant. A rash word brought annihilation. Fear sealed lips, neighbors distrusted each other. Within the wilderness, no one dared speak their doubts openly. At first, this terrible power targeted only converts who wavered or left. Soon, worse rumors spread. murdered immigrants, pillaged camps untouched by Indians, new women and elders' harems bearing marks of horror. Wanderers spoke of masked, armed secret gangs, the Danite Band or Avenging Angels, a name that still chills ranchers in the West. Little was known of this ruthless society. Participants' names were secret. Even trusted friends might be masked avengers. Hence, all lived in fear and silence. One morning Ferrier prepared to work his fields when he saw approaching the stout, sandy-haired Brigham Young himself. Alarmed, Ferrier greeted him, but Young's cold manner foretold ill news. He followed Ferrier sternly into the sitting room. "Brother Ferrier," Young said, "the true believers have been good to you. We saved you starving in the desert, shared food, led you here, gave you land and watched you prosper. Isn't that so?" "It is," Ferrier replied. "In return we asked one thing, that you embrace the true faith and conform to its customs. You promised, but reports say you have neglected this." "How so?" Ferrier asked. "Have I not given to the common fund? Attended the temple? Where are your wives?" Young asked sharply. "Bring them in that I may greet them." "I have none," Ferrier said. "Women were few and had better claims. I wasn't lonely, I had my daughter. I speak of your daughter, she is Utah's flower and favored by many highborn." Ferrier groaned inwardly. "There are rumors she is sealed to a Gentile," said Young. "That must be idle talk. Rule 13 of St. Joseph Smith says, 'Let every maiden marry one of the elect. If she wed a Gentile, she commits a grievous sin.' You, professing the faith, cannot suffer such." Ferrier played nervously with his riding whip. "Your faith will be tested on this point," so ruled the Sacred Council of Four. "Though young, she shall have a month to choose, between the sons of Stangerson and Drebber. Both young, wealthy, and true believers. What do you say?" Ferrier thought long. "A month then," he said. "She is barely of age." Young rose, face flushed and eyes blazing. "Better you and she lie skeletal on Sierra Blanco than defy the Holy Four's orders." He left, his heavy steps crunching away. Ferrier sat deep in thought when Lucy came in, pale and frightened. "I heard," she whispered, his voice, the prophet's. "What shall we do?" "Don't fear," he said, embracing her. "We'll manage." "You don't care less for him?" she sobbed, squeezing his hand. "No, of course not. He's a good lad and a Christian, more than these folk in spite of their prayers. A party leaves for Nevada tomorrow. I'll send word. If I know him, he'll return swiftly." Lucy smiled amid tears. "He'll advise us. But I fear for you. People say terrible things happen to those opposing the prophet." "We haven't opposed yet," he replied. "We'll watch for storms when we do. We have a clear month, then I suppose best leave Utah." "Leave Utah? That's the truth. But the farm? We'll raise money, let the rest go. I've thought of leaving before. I won't bow to any man like these folks do to their prophet. I'm a free-born American. Maybe I'm too old to learn. If he comes here he might meet buckshot flying back." "But they won't let us go," she said. "Wait for Jefferson and we'll manage. Meanwhile don't fret or cry, he won't recognize swollen eyes. There's no danger." Though confident, Ferrier fastidiously secured doors and cleaned his old shotgun that night. Chapter 4: A Flight for Life. The morning after his meeting with the Mormon prophet, John Ferrier went into Salt Lake City. Finding his acquaintance bound for the Nevada mountains, he entrusted him with a message for Jefferson Hope, warning of great danger and urging his speedy return. Feeling eased, Ferrier returned home with a lighter heart. Approaching his farm, he was startled to find a horse hitched to each gate post. Even more so upon entering to see two young men occupying his sitting room. One, pale and long-faced, lounged in a rocking chair with feet on the stove. The other, bull-necked and coarse-featured, stood by the window whistling a hymn. Both nodded to Ferrier. The one in the chair spoke first. "Maybe you don't know us," he said. "I'm the son of Elder Drebber. This is Joseph Stangerson. You traveled with us when the Lord brought you into the true fold. As he will all nations in his good time," nasal-voiced Drebber added. "Slow but sure is his grind." Ferrier bowed coldly, already guessing their identities. Stangerson continued, "On our father's advice we've come to ask for your daughter's hand, for whichever of us she and you choose. I have 4 wives, Brother Drebber 7, so I claim the stronger right." "Nay, brother," replied Drebber, "it's not wives but how many we can keep. My father gave me his mills, I'm the richer now." "My prospects are better," Stangerson said warmly. "When my father dies I'll have his tannery and leather factory. Then I'm your elder, higher in the church." "Let the maiden decide," smirked Drebber at his reflection. We'll leave it to her. Ferrier, fuming, could scarcely keep his riding whip from their backs. Look here, he said, stepping forward. When my daughter calls, you may come. But till then, I want neither of you in my sight. The two stared in surprise. This competition was to them the highest honor for father and daughter. There are two ways out, Ferrier warned, the door or the window. Which do you choose? His savage look and threatening hands made them spring to their feet and retreat quickly. Ferrier followed to the door. Let me know when you settle which, he said sarcastically. You'll pay for this. Stangerson shouted, white with rage. You defy the prophet and the council of four. You'll rue it. The Lord's hand will strike you, added Drebber. Then I'll strike first, Ferrier growled, reaching for his gun, until Lucy seized his arm to restrain him. Before he could flee, horses thundered outside. Those canting rascals, he said, wiping sweat. I'd rather see you dead than my girl married to either. So would I, father, Lucy answered boldly. But Jefferson will come soon. Yes, the sooner the better. We don't know their next move. Indeed, help was urgently needed. Such rank defiance of the elders was unprecedented in the settlement. If minor faults met such punishment, what fate awaited this rebel? Ferrier knew wealth and status could not save him. Others as rich and known had vanished, their goods seized. He was brave but scared of the invisible terrors around him. Known dangers he faced calmly, the suspense unnerved him. He hid fears from Lucy, pretending all was well, though she saw his unease. He expected a warning from Young, and was not mistaken. Next morning, on the bed's coverlet, lay a square of paper pinned above his chest, boldly inscribed. 29 days are given you for amendment, and then... The dash was more frightening than any threat. How it came remained a mystery. Servants slept in an outhouse, doors and windows secured. Ferrier crushed the paper but said nothing to Lucy. The 29 days matched the month Young promised. What strength could deter an enemy with such secret power? The pin might signal death without his knowledge. More shaken was he next morning. At breakfast, Lucy cried, pointing at the ceiling, the number 28 burned there. It baffled her. Ferrier said nothing. That night he kept watch armed. Morning revealed a large 27 painted outside his door. Day after day, as sure as dawn, unseen foes marked the remaining days. Numbers appeared on walls, floors, gates, railings. Ferrier could find no source. A near superstitious dread overwhelmed him. Haggard and restless, his eyes hunted like prey. Only hope, Jefferson Hope's arrival. Days passed, 20 to 15, 15 to 10, with no sign. At every horse's clatter or driver's shout, Ferrier rushed to the gate in vain. At 5, then 4, then 3, hope faded. Alone and lacking thorough mountain knowledge, Ferrier knew he was helpless. Well-traveled roads were watched and barred without council orders. No escape seemed possible. Yet he vowed to die rather than surrender his daughter's honor. One evening, lost in his troubles, pondering escape, he heard a low scratching at the door. Was it an assassin who came to kill? An agent marking the final warning? The suspense chilled him worse than death. Drawing the bolt, he flung open the door. Outside lay calm under twinkling stars, no one in the garden or road. But, directly at his feet, lay a man flat face down, arms and legs sprawled. Terrified, Ferrier leaned against the wall to stifle a cry. The figure writhed forward swiftly and silently into the house. Standing, the fierce face of Jefferson Hope confronted him. Good God! How you scared me! Why come like that? Feed me, Hope rasped, throwing himself on cold meat and bread left from dinner, devouring ravenously. Has Lucy borne up? She does not know the danger, Ferrier said. That's well. The house is watched closely. That's why I crawled in. They're sharp, but not sharp enough for a Washoe hunter. Ferrier felt strength renewed by this faithful ally. Grasping Hope's leathery hand warmly, he said, You're a man to be proud of. Few would share such danger. True, pard, Hope smiled. If you were alone, I might think twice. It's Lucy that drives me. Before harm befalls her, one less hope remains in Utah. What now? Tomorrow's your last day. Act tonight or you're lost. I have a mule and 2 horses waiting in Eagle Ravine. How much money do you have? 2,000 in gold, 5 in notes. That will do. I have as much more. We must push for Carson City through the mountains. Wake Lucy, servants sleep away from the house. While Ferrier prepared Lucy, Hope packed provisions and filled a water jar, knowing mountain wells were scarce. Soon Ferrier returned with Lucy ready. Their greeting was warm but brief. Minutes were precious. We must start at once, Hope said resolutely. Front and back entrances are watched, but with care we can slip out the side window and cross fields. We're only 2 miles from the ravine where the horses wait. By dawn we should be halfway through the mountains. What if stopped? Hope patted the revolver at his chest. If too many, we take 2 or 3 with us, he smiled darkly. Lights inside extinguished, Ferrier peered over his own fields, now to be left forever. He braced himself, comforted by Lucy's happiness, with the thought of her honor outweighing ruined fortunes. All seemed peaceful, the rustling trees and silent grain stretch concealing lurking murder. Ferrier carried gold and notes, Hope bore provisions and water, Lucy a small bundle of treasures. Opening the window slowly, they slipped out one by one into the garden. Crouching low, they hurried to the hedge, then to a gap leading into cornfields. Just as they reached it, Hope pulled them down into shadow. His keen ears caught a hollow hoot nearby, answered in kind a few yards off. A vague figure emerged from the gap and called again, signaling a second man to appear. "Tomorrow at midnight," said the first, "when the whippoorwill calls 3 times. "Well said," answered the other. "Shall I tell Brother Drebber?" "Pass it on and spread the word." 9 to 7. 7 to 5, came the reply. The two vanished in different ways. With their footsteps gone, Hope rose and helped his companions across the fields at full speed, half carrying the girl when weak. "Hurry. We're through the sentinels. Speed is all." "Hurry," he gasped. On the high road they slipped past one person by hiding in a field. Before town, Hope took a rugged footpath into the mountains. 2 dark peaks loomed. The narrow, rough defile led to Eagle Canyon, where horses waited. Hope picked his way expertly over rocks and dry streambeds to the secret corral, placed Lucy on the mule, Ferrier on a horse with money, Hope leading another. The perilous route was only for practiced riders, but every step lightened their burden of fear as they fled despotism. At the canyon's wildest part, a lone sentinel challenged. "Who goes there?" "Travelers for Nevada," said Hope, hand on rifle. The watcher fingered his gun, eyes suspicious. "By whose permission?" "The Holy Four," Ferrier answered. 9 from 7, came the sentinel. 7 from 5, confirmed Hope. "Pass and the Lord go with you," said the voice. The path widened, horses trotted. Looking back, they saw the sentinel leaning on his gun. They had passed the saint's outpost. Freedom lay ahead. Chapter 5: The Avenging Angels. They traveled all night through tangled defile and rocky paths. Lost more than once, Hope's mountain knowledge recovered the trail. Morning revealed a savage beauty, snow-capped peaks towering in every direction, steep banks with larch and pine hanging overhead, ready to fall with a gust. Fallen rocks covered the valley. Suddenly, a great rock thundered down, startling horses into gallop. Sunrise lit peaks like lamps at a festival, lifting the travelers' spirits. They paused at a rushing mountain stream to water horses and eat hastily. Lucy and Ferrier wished to rest longer, but Hope pressed on. "They'll be on our track by now. Speed is all. In Carson we can rest forever." They pushed on through rugged defile, evening finding shelter at a cliff's base. Sheltered among rocks, they slept briefly but were quickly on the move before dawn. No pursuers appeared. Hope thought them out of reach, unaware of the iron grip soon to close around them. Midway through their flight, provisions ran low. Hunting was familiar to Hope, who stoked a fire and set out to find game. After hours fruitless, he finally spotted a mountain sheep, the bighorn, on a rock high above. Taking aim, he shot it. It fell to the valley. Too heavy to carry whole, he took meat from the haunch and hurried back, night falling. He'd lost track of familiar ravines and struggled to find the path by darkness, the moon not yet risen. Exhausted, he kept Hope, each step bringing him closer to Lucy and enough food for their journey. At the ravine's mouth he called loudly but no answer came. Fear gripped him. Approaching the fire site, he found unkempt ashes and no sign of life. Lucy and Ferrier were gone, no trace. Some sudden disaster had befallen them in his absence. Shaken, Hope recovered and searched the camp by firelight. Tracks of many horses showed pursuit. Their fleeing route led back to Salt Lake City. Has Lucy been taken? In horror, Hope found a fresh grave, marked by a stick bearing a paper. John Ferrier, formerly of Salt Lake City, died August 4, 1860. His friend was gone, Lucy presumably taken for the elder son's harem. Powerless to prevent her fate, Hope longed to lie beside Ferrier in death. But despair fled. With fierce patience and Indian-taught vengeance, Hope vowed to bring justice to his enemies by his own hand. He prepared food, bundled it, and began a weary 6-day trek back into the mountains, restless but driven. On the 6th day he reached Eagle Canyon, overlooking Salt Lake City. Worn, he cursed the city's stillness. Horses' hoofbeats heralded a visitor, Mormon Cooper, once helped by Hope. Recognizing Hope's weather-beaten, ghastly appearance, Cooper warned, "You're mad to come here. I risk my life speaking to you. The Holy Four want you arrested for helping the Ferriers flee." "I fear them not." "For God's sake answer, what became of Lucy Ferrier?" "Married yesterday to young Drebber." "See the flags on Endowment House?" They had a contest between Drebber and Stangerson, her father's killer. Drebber's party won. "But she looks like a ghost. Are you leaving?" "Yes." Hope stood, face fierce and determined, eyes aflame. "Where to?" "Never mind." Slinging his rifle, he strode off into wild mountains, fierce as any beast. Sadly, the Mormon's prophecy was true. Lucy's fate, death within a month, followed. Her drunken husband mourned little. Other wives kept vigil. When just before burial, a fierce stranger burst in, kissed Lucy's brow, and snatched the wedding ring from her finger, the horrified women saw the ring vanish. The stranger fled swiftly. Hope lingered months in the mountains, nursing his vengeful fire. Tales told of a wild figure haunting the city and gorges. Bullets and deadly rocks came close to Drebber and Stangerson. Both searched for Hope but failed, guarded their homes and each other. Relaxed over time, thinking their foe was gone. Far from cooling, Hope's hatred burned brighter. Practical and strong-willed, he knew danger would kill him if unchecked. Returning to Nevada mines to regain health and gather funds, he planned to pursue vengeance without hardship. Though intending a year's absence, delays kept him 5 years. His hatred fresh at journey's end, he disguised himself and returned to Salt Lake City. There he found news: a schism had divided the saints. Drebber and Stangerson had left, unknown where. Drebber converted much property to money before fleeing wealthy. Stangerson was poor. Many would give up revenge in such confusion. Hope did not. With meager means and odd jobs, he pursued his enemies across America. Years passed, his black hair grayed, still dogged he chased. A glance in a window told him Cleveland, Ohio, held his foes. But upon arriving, he found Drebber had fled to Europe, and before Hope's release from custody for suspicion, Drebber and Stangerson left for England. Again frustrated, Hope continued, saved money and journeyed to Europe. Though trailing from city to city, he barely missed them. Paris to Copenhagen to London, there he finally found them. As for what came next, we return to his own account in Dr. Watson's journal, to which we owe much. Chapter 6: A continuation of the reminiscences of John Watson, M.D. Despite his furious struggle, our prisoner showed no hostility toward us. When he realized he was powerless, he smiled amiably and hoped he hadn't hurt any of us in the scuffle. "I guess you're taking me to the police station," he said to Holmes. "My cab's outside. If you free my legs, I'll walk to it. I ain't so light as I used to be." Gregson and Lestrade exchanged looks at this bold suggestion, but Holmes took him at his word. He loosened the towel around the man's ankles. The prisoner rose, stretched, and I noted that he was powerfully built, with a sunburned face full of grim energy, a formidable figure. "If there's a vacancy for chief of police, you'd be the man," he said, nodding at Holmes. "The way you kept after me was something to admire." "You'd better come with me," Holmes told the detectives. "I can drive you," offered Lestrade. "Good. Gregson comes inside with me, and Doctor, you've taken an interest, so stay with us." I gladly agreed and we all left together. The prisoner made no move to flee. He calmly entered his own cab and we followed. Lestrade took the box seat, whipped the horse and quickly brought us to the station. Inside, a somber police inspector noted the prisoner's name and the murders charged against him, performing his task with dull detachment. "The prisoner will appear before magistrates this week," he said. "Meanwhile, Mr. Jefferson Hope, do you wish to say anything? Your words will be recorded and may be used against you." "I have plenty to say," the prisoner answered solemnly. "I want to tell you all about it." "Better wait for your trial?" asked the inspector. "I may never have one," he said calmly. "No, not suicide, I mean." Then he turned to me, fixing me with fierce eyes. "Are you a doctor?" "Yes," I replied. "Put your hand here," he said, motioning with manacled wrists to his chest. I pressed my hand against his chest and immediately felt a strange throbbing, as if inside his chest walls were trembling. In the silence I heard a dull humming from within. "You've got an aortic aneurysm," I exclaimed. "That's what they call it," he said peacefully. "I saw a doctor last week. He said it will burst soon. Got it from harsh life in the Salt Lake Mountains, exposure and poor diet." I've done my work and I don't care when I go. But I want to leave an account behind me. I don't want to be remembered as some common cutthroat. After a brief consultation, the inspector asked, "Doctor, is he in immediate danger?" "Most certainly." "Then, in justice's interest, we must hear his statement," the inspector said. "You may give your account now." The prisoner settled back, weary from the tussle. "This aneurysm tires me. I'm near death and not likely to lie. Every word is the truth, its use doesn't matter to me." With that, Jefferson Hope began his remarkable, calm account. His words were recorded exactly by Lestrade's shorthand. "It matters little why I hated those men," he said. "It's enough they caused the death of two souls, a father and daughter, and thus lost their own lives. Too much time has passed for court justice. I knew they were guilty, so I made myself judge, jury, and executioner. You'd have done the same if you'd been me. That girl was to marry me 20 years ago. She was forced to wed Drebber and died broken-hearted. I took her wedding ring and vowed his last thoughts would be of his crime. I kept that ring, chasing him and his accomplice over 2 continents until I caught them. They thought they'd wear me out, but they couldn't. If I die tomorrow, I die knowing my work is done. They died by my hand. Nothing more to hope or want. They were wealthy, I was poor, making the chase hard. When I reached London, my pockets were nearly empty and I had to find work. Riding and driving came naturally, so I became a cabbie. I had to pay the owner a weekly sum and kept any extra, which was little. Learning London's confusing streets was hardest, but once I knew the major hotels and stations, I managed well. I found them at last at a boarding house in Camberwell. They never went out alone or at night. For 2 weeks I tailed them daily by cab and foot. Drebber was drunk much of the time. Stangerson was ever watchful. They never parted. I feared no chance would come, but my time was near. The thing in my chest might burst first. One evening while driving the street, I saw a cab arrive at their door. Luggage was carried out, then Drebber and Stangerson came out and left. I followed, uneasy to see if they'd move. At Euston Station they looked for a Liverpool train. None was expected for hours. Drebber said he'd some business to do alone, much to Stangerson's displeasure. They quarreled. Stangerson gave in, arranging to meet at Halliday's private hotel if he missed the train. At last my chance came. Alone Drebber was mine. I waited, heart pounding. That night was wild and stormy. I lit a cigar, steadied nerves but shook with excitement. At the house I found Drebber drunkenly asleep, woke him and led him inside. I held a light before my face and asked, "Who am I?" He saw me and terror swept his features. He staggered away, trembling and sweating, teeth chattering. I laughed aloud, vengeance sweeter than I'd known. I said, "You dog, I hunted you from Salt Lake City to St. Petersburg. Now your wanderings end, either you or I die before dawn." He tried to deny me, but I locked the door, shook the key and reminded him of Lucy Ferrier. He faltered, knowing pleas would fail. "Would you murder me?" he asked. "No murder, a mad dog's death," I replied. "What mercy had you for Lucy, dragged from her slain father to your shameless harem?" He claimed he didn't kill her father. "But you broke her heart," I shouted, showing him the pill box. "Choose and eat. One pill kills, the other leaves life. I'll take the one you leave. Let justice prevail." He screamed, begged, but I held a knife to his throat until he took a pill. I swallowed the other. Silence followed, waiting to see who lived. His face changed as poison took hold. I laughed, holding Lucy's ring before his eyes. A spasm, a cry, collapse, and he was dead. My nose bled through this, but I didn't heed. On impulse, I dipped my finger in the blood and wrote "rake" on a wall to mislead police. Then I slipped away. The ring was lost. I found later I'd dropped it near Drebber's body and had to risk returning to find it. When the police arrived, I pretended to be drunk to avoid suspicion. That's how Drebber died. Then I did the same for Stangerson at Halliday's hotel. Woke him, offered the pill choice. He attacked me. I stabbed him in self-defense. After that, I continued cabbing, saving for a return to America. Then the ragged boy summoned my cab to 221B Baker Street, where you shackled me. That's my story. You may call me a murderer, but I see myself as justice's servant. His sober, calm manner captivated us. Even the seasoned detectives leaned forward. When he finished, we sat silently, save for Lestrade's pen scratching. "One question," Holmes said. "Who was your accomplice who answered my ring advertisement?" He winked at Holmes. "I keep my secrets but don't get others in trouble. I saw your ad, thought it a trap or maybe my ring. My friend volunteered to check it. He did well." "Indeed?" Holmes smiled. "Gentlemen," the inspector said, Legal process requires the prisoner to appear before magistrates Thursday. Your presence will be needed. Until then, I'll hold him. Jefferson Hope was led away as Holmes and I left the station. Chapter 7 The Conclusion. Though summoned for Thursday, we needed not testify. A higher judge intervened. That very night the aneurysm burst, and Jefferson Hope was found dead in his cell, a peaceful smile on his face as though satisfied with a life well spent and a work completed. Gregson and Lestrade will be wild at his death, Holmes said later. Where's their big advertisement now? They didn't do much for his capture, I think, I replied. What matters is what people believe you did. Never mind, Holmes added more cheerfully, I wouldn't have missed the investigation for anything. No better case in memory, simple yes but instructive. Simple? I exclaimed. Really? The simplicity is shown by the fact that, with only a few ordinary deductions, I caught the criminal in 3 days. That's true, I agreed. I told you, uncommon events often guide you rather than hinder. The key is reasoning backwards. Few people practice it. Most reason forwards, seeing events leading to results. But reasoning backwards, from known results to causes, is rarer, more useful. I'll show you how I worked this case. At first, I approached the house free of ideas. Examining the road outside, I noticed cab wheel marks present during the night. Their narrow gauge showed they were cab, not private carriage. This was the first fact. My second step was studying the garden path, clay soil perfect for impressions. What seemed random marks were meaningful. Heavy constable's footprints and earlier tracks of 2 men, one notably tall, judgeable from stride length, the other fashionably dressed, small elegant boot prints. Inside the house, the well-booted man lay dead, confirming my inference. The tall man must have been the murderer. No wounds on the victim, but his terrified expression suggested he foreknew death. Dying naturally rarely shows such agitation. Sniffing his lips, I detected a sour smell, poison likely forced upon him. Only the hatred shown explained this. It matched known cases of forcible poisoning. What? Since no theft, was it politics or personal? Political murders are quick escapes. This was deliberate, with the murderer spending time and leaving tracks. It was personal vengeance. The blood-red message on the wall seemed a blind. Finding the ring confirmed this. The murderer used it to remind the victim of a lost or dead woman. Gregson had overlooked the telegram clarifying this in his inquiry. Careful room search confirmed the murderer's height. Other details included his cigar ashes and long nails. Lack of blood outside the body led me to think the blood came from his nose in emotion, matching his red face. Events proved me right. Concluding, I telegraphed Cleveland police about Drebber's marriage, learning he sought protection from an old rival, Jefferson Hope. This was my key. I was certain the man who entered the house with Drebber was the cab driver. Only a driver could explain the horse's wandering wheels. No sane man would commit crime with a witness nearby. Also, a cab driver could keep close watch. So I formed my street boy detective corps and searched cabs until I found Hope, leading to his capture. The killing of Stangerson was unforeseen but inevitable. The pill boxes were among my discoveries. The case was a logical, unbroken chain. Wonderful, I said. You deserve public praise. Shall I publish the story? Do as you wish, he answered, handing me today's Echo. The paper's paragraph read. The public lost a sensational narrative in Jefferson Hope's sudden death, suspected murderer of Drebber and Stangerson. The crime stemmed from a long romantic feud involving love and Mormonism. Both victims were Latter-day Saints. Hope hailed from Salt Lake City. Though details remain unknown, the case highlights the detective police's efficiency and serves as a warning to foreigners to settle disputes at home. Credit belongs to Scotland Yard's Lestrade and Gregson. Hope was caught in rooms belonging to Mr. Sherlock Holmes, an amateur detective with promise. Didn't I tell you? Holmes laughed. That's the legacy of our study in Scarlet, to get them a testimonial. Never mind, I said. The facts are safe in my journal and will be known. Meanwhile, you may take comfort in success like the Roman miser who said, "The crowd hisses me but I applaud myself. At home alone I contemplate my hoarded gold."